Chapter 3458. Even as she died, she wondered why Yi Qian wasn't the one who died, but her. Even in death, she couldn't accept the fact that she didn't kill Yi Qian. There were good and evil in human nature, and Sun Ying was evil to the extreme. Yi Qian was not affected by her words at all. If reincarnation really happened, then she, Yi Ying, and Sun Ying would definitely be enemies for all their lives. They would have to fight to the death for all their lives. In her previous life, she died, and Ying won. In this life, Sun Ying died, and she won. If reincarnation really happened, this would be the path that she and Sun Ying had to go through. Xia Jinyuan reached out and checked Sun Ying's neck artery. He couldn't feel her pulse at all. When he saw that Sun Ying still had a fierce expression on her face, his gaze darkened. He said to Yi Qian, "Send her to the hospital first. Let the military handle the rest. It has nothing to do with us anymore." The military was worried that Yi Qian would make a mistake because of his emotions, but they didn't expect Sun Ying to seek her own death. Death meant the disappearance and the end. Then, everything between Yi Jian and Sun Ying would be over. He saw the darkness in her eyes dissipating bit by bit. In the end, her eyes became clear like the ripples in the water. Everything returned to calmness without any fluctuation. This was Qing Niao, a special forces soldier who was highly valued by the military and cultivated with great effort. And she didn't disappoint the military leaders either. For some reason, when Xia Jinyuan saw Yi Qian now, he suddenly felt very at ease. It was as if the things that had caused Yi Qian pain in the past were far away. She was still the same person in front of him, but there was something different about her. She was like a pearl that had finally wiped off the thin layer of dust on the outside. Her own warm glow was finally faintly emitted. This kind of Yi Qian made him feel so at ease at this moment. Yi Qian, who had already let go of everything that had happened between her and Yi Ying in her previous life, was naturally different now. She was much calmer, and her entire state of mind was much more stable. She had walked the path of life and death, so no matter how difficult it was in the future, she would face it more calmly than before. Ma Yingli put Sun Ying, whose body was still warm, on the ground. Ma Yingli's face was as calm as a mirror. She stood up and spat out a mouthful of foul air mixed with the smell of blood. Then, she said in a deep voice, "Sun Ying brought about her own death. I still need to write a report to the military." Xia Jinyuan nodded slightly. "Don't worry about any punishment. I've already recorded what she said before she died. I know the whole process. You just need to write a report." Sun Ying had died in an accident, and there were no surveillance cameras nearby. Although it was a little troublesome to explain, they could completely restore the scene and explain everything to the military. Combined with what Sun Ying had said before she died, although the process would be a little complicated, it would not affect Yi Qian. Yi Qian also knew that the process would be a little troublesome. When the time came, she would cooperate with the military throughout the investigation. She had a clear conscience and was not afraid of the investigation. Just as the two of them were waiting for the ambulance to arrive, they heard footsteps approaching the market. Xia Jinyuan had already taken out his pistol and at the same time signaled Yi Qian to hide. The two of them immediately went on alert when they heard the footsteps. It was none other than the scout that the National Defense had arranged to follow Sun Ying. He had just received a call from a National Defense and found out that the criminal he had been following had died in an accident. He followed the orders of the higher-ups and revealed himself. The National Defense is already aware of the situation here. Although the accidental death of the criminal shocked the National Defense, the National Defense believes that the two of you will abide by the rules and will not do anything that is detrimental to the National Defense. I'll take photos here to collect evidence. When the time comes, all the photos will be sent to the National Defense, the military, and the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection. Leave the scene to me. It's inconvenient for the two of you to expose your identities. You can leave now to support your comrades. Chapter 3459. The scout arranged by the National Defense Force was not tall, only about 1.7 meters tall. His thin stature gave him an unfathomable feeling. These were all elite scouts of the National Defense Force. No one would be able to discover his identity if he blended into the crowd. This was also why he had been following Sun Ying without being discovered. The appearance of the scout made Xia Jinyuan sigh in relief. This way, Yi Qian only needed to clearly write down the entire process of Sun Ying bumping into the knife. With the National Defense Force's scouting ability and on-site investigation ability, as well as the dagger in Sun Ying's chest, they could completely deduce the entire process of the incident. Just now, the scouts said that they could leave to support their comrades. This made Xia Jinyuan frown slightly, and Yi Qian's heart couldn't help but thump lightly. According to the plan, they would meet up with Sun Ying, while Bai He and the others would immediately capture the Asian man. Now that Sun Ying had been executed, Bai He's situation was unclear. It was unrealistic to go and support Bai He. Both sides were on different missions and were not directly equipped with wireless communication. Just now, they had contacted each other through mobile phone text messages. If they used text messages now, Bai He, who was on a mission, would definitely have turned off his phone. Therefore, they couldn't go and support him even if they wanted to. However, for the latest updates on Bai He, it was best to contact the army. Xia Jinyuan contacted the army, while Yi Qian stood in a dark corner by the street and heard the sound of the ambulance approaching from afar. Soon, the ambulance sped past her eyes. After arriving at the market, the doctors and nurses finally confirmed that Sun Ying had died. The higher-ups would compromise and make arrangements for the aftermath. The scout left with the ambulance. Standing by the road and watching the ambulance leave, Yi Qian stood still. In his ears, the sound of the ambulance whistling resounded. Faintly, the scenery and objects in front of him seemed to be distorted, and everything around him seemed to have changed. There were no longer messy old houses, nor were there countless wholesale food stores, clothing stores, and vegetable markets. Everything was replaced by bright and neat tall buildings. There was an endless stream of traffic and people shuttling back and forth. His line of sight passed through the crowd and fell on the building with large golden words, Binan International Hotel. Looking down, his line of sight landed on the entrance of the hotel. He saw an ambulance parked there, surrounded by policemen in black uniforms. He saw a doctor in a white coat walking out with a stretcher. The person carrying the stretcher seemed to be in a hurry. When he went down the steps, there was a bump. The person lying on the stretcher suddenly dropped an arm. The accompanying doctor bent down and gently placed the arm back on the stretcher. The sharp sound of the ambulance driving out of the hotel pierced the air. Gradually, the scenery and objects. The sound disappeared, and the scene in front of her became distorted. Yi Jian closed her eyes gently and opened them again. There were no tall buildings or policemen in black uniforms. The dazed. It turned out that after she died, she was sent to the ambulance. Along the way, a doctor carefully and warmly protected her last bit of dignity. He did not let her arm hang out of the stretcher. It ended here, and it started here. The previous life had come to an end. In this life, she was reborn. Goodbye, Yi Qian from the previous life. Chapter 3460. Let's go, Qing Yao. A deep and cold voice came from behind. Yi Qian turned around and saw Xia Jinyuan, who had just finished his call with the military, striding over. The Asian man has been arrested, but the target has escaped. We'll return to the motel for now. Yi Qian was shocked. How could the target have escaped? Wasn't he under surveillance the whole time? How could he have escaped? The Asian man had a special chip implanted in his body. The special chip was turned off during the hunt, and the target immediately escaped. The airport and train stations are conducting a thorough search. The city's sky has been activated, and the police are on the hunt. Xia Jinyuan, who had rushed to meet up with Bai He, quickly told Yi Qian everything that had happened. The military has determined that Li Chuhai not only has a foreign underground force behind him, but he might also have foreign military support. Otherwise, the Asian man wouldn't have been implanted with a high-cost special chip that is connected to a satellite system. Yi Jian's face was very solemn when she heard that. It was no longer as simple as hunting down the final target and bringing him to justice. With the military support of other countries, this had already involved national security. The rise of China had caused many other countries to feel threatened. The rise of a large country had global influence. How could some countries hope to see the rise of a large country? They were afraid that the rise of a large country would threaten them. They were afraid that the rise of a large country would take away their limited resources. Therefore, they needed to find a way to break the current situation and find a way to suppress it. These were not things that Yi Qian could come into contact with or understand. Only important people like Xia Jinyuan and Qin Xiu would know a little about them. After listening quietly, Yi Qian pursed his lips into a straight line. Then he asked, Captain Xia, I want to ask who is the target? You've been avoiding me all this time. During the meeting, you showed the Asian man's photo, but you didn't tell me who the mastermind was. Do I know him? If not, why did they deliberately hide it from her? She knew that the military, national defense, and the military commission had locked onto the mastermind. She also knew why they wanted to kill her mother. She knew all of this, but she didn't know who the mastermind was. Why did they hide it from her? Why did he hide himself? Since they even showed her the photo of the Asian man, why didn't they let her know who the real mastermind was? Why? She could not understand and needed Captain Xia to explain. Xia Jinyuan, on the other hand, felt that the military was as cunning as usual, always throwing such difficult questions at him. If he had known, he would not have asked who the mastermind was. He had asked and found out, but now he had to hide it for the time being. And now Yi Qian had come to ask again, and had even asked the most important question. Should he answer or not? After pondering for a moment, Xia Jinyuan said, Yes, but we can also say that we don't know each other. I don't think you've met him, but you've had dealings with people related to him. He didn't say who it was directly. With Qin Niao's intelligence, it wouldn't take long for her to guess who it was. Is it because I know someone who is related to the mastermind, so it's not convenient for me to reveal it? Moreover, this person that I know has an extraordinary relationship with him, right? If Yi Qian wasn't smart, he wouldn't have been able to survive in such a difficult place in his previous life. Chapter 3461. When she said this, she had already eliminated a few of her friends who knew her family well. She didn't need to consider those she knew in middle school and high school, so she could only think of those she knew in university. He Jing and Su Wen were out of the question. As for her classmates, it was impossible for the military to be so cautious as to not let her know who they were. Then, she could only think of the people closest to her. Who would be the closest person to her? There were too many people closest to her, so Yi Qian couldn't guess who it was. But the way she frowned and pondered made Xia Jinyuan's heart skip a beat. Walking on an empty street in the middle of the night and facing the cold wind, his palms were sweating even though it was so cold. She couldn't guess who it was now, but she believed that she would be able to figure out soon. But this time, Xia Jinyuan obviously overestimated Yi Qian. She really couldn't guess who it was that had dealings with the mastermind behind her mother's death. Stop guessing. Since the military wants to hide it, they must have their reasons. Let's go back to the motel and rest for the night. Tomorrow morning, we'll go to Martyrs Park to pay respects to mother-in-law and Uncle General. We still need to rush back to the capital. You may return to the base directly to continue training, or you may stay in the capital and wait for school to start. As for me, I should be going on a long trip again. The mastermind had escaped, and the power behind him was so complicated. It was time for the Snowfield Brigade's special forces to take action. The military was still a little nervous when the other special forces took action. Xia Jinyuan didn't say anything else, and Yi Qian continued to use the method of elimination to find out who she knew and who the mastermind was. One deliberately didn't say anything, while the other was deep in thought. They returned to the motel in silence. In a place like the motel, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian were both people who had slept in the swamp, so they weren't picky at all, but they still paid attention to hygiene. Facing the yellowed quilt and sheets, the two of them sat on a chair, turned on the small electric heater in the room, and huddled together to sleep. After a few minutes, Xia Jinyuan moved his long legs and turned to Yi Qian, who was sleeping on his shoulder, and asked, "How about we change to another hotel?" Although they had slept in the wild, they felt that sleeping in the wild was better than sleeping in a small hotel. The soundproofing effect was really, really bad. It was so bad that one could hear the head of the bed hitting the wall, as well as indescribable sounds. Although Yiqian's men had returned to the small hotel, they did not manage anything. She was still trying to figure out who knew the mastermind. As she thought about it, she figured out a key point. To be able to kill his own mother and erase all of his mother's deeds in the original army, this person must have a high position in the family. Thinking of this, she narrowed down the scope again and started to get closer to the truth bit by bit. While Xia Jinyuan was speaking, she was deep in thought. Yiqian was so focused that he did not hear anything. When he heard the question, he closed his eyes and answered, "Sorry to trouble you. This is the old district, and the better hotels are all in the new district. There are no buses at night, so we have to take a taxi. What's that sound?" As he spoke, Yiqian pulled himself back from his thoughts and finally heard an unusual sound. It sounded like someone was hitting the wall. Then, he heard a woman's soft, sobbing sound. Yiqian suddenly opened his eyes, and then he slowly lifted his head from Xia Jinyuan's shoulder. His face was turning red at a speed visible to the naked eye. This sound, cough, it was indescribable. It was not suitable for children. Chapter 3462. When Xia Jinyuan saw this, he chuckled and said, "Now you know why I want to change rooms. There are rooms here and there, but the room between us is the only one that is proper. And this wall." He stood up, knelt on one knee on the bed, and knocked on the wall. It's made of 2 planks less than 5 centimeters thick, and it's hollow in the middle. As long as there's a man and woman on the bed, this metal bed can easily crash into the wall. There's a man and woman on the bed. Yiqian was so embarrassed that he didn't know where to look. "Tonight, we're going to sleep here. We'll hear the sounds of human reproduction all night, so neither of us will be able to sleep well. Of course, I don't mind, but I'm just worried that you'll feel uncomfortable." She already felt uncomfortable, but now there's no. Before he could finish a sentence, there was the sound of humans banging against the wall from the other side of the wall. What was even scarier than the previous room was that the sound coming from this room was loud from the beginning. The woman was screaming and gasping as if she was nailed to the wall. Yiqian was so shocked that he immediately changed his mind. "Let's go to the hotel. Let's go to the hotel right now." She didn't want to stay here any longer. Does it need to be so loud? It's already going through the wall. Thanks to this sound, Yiqian stopped thinking about it and broke the heavy atmosphere. At around 12 o'clock p.m., Xia Jinyuan left the small hotel with a small handbag that only contained their change of clothes. With one arm around Yiqian's shoulder, he left the small hotel. This area was already very crowded. People who stayed in small hotels on New Year's Day were either having affairs or doing business nearby. Yiqian only chose this place because it was close to the farmer's market. It was very troublesome to get a taxi from the small hotel. The two of them walked in the cold wind for about half an hour before he drove them to the new district. When he received Xia Jinyuan's message, he immediately called back. Fortunately, he remembered to turn on his phone at the last minute. Otherwise, Yiqian would have suspected that the two of them would have braved the wind and rain to walk to the new district. In the car, he roughly described the process of chasing the middle-aged Asian man. He was very cunning. Our car directly hit him. He pretended to be dead first. After we pried open the door, he ran out with his head covered in blood. Long Eagle and Sparrow Hawk immediately chased after him and caught him from behind. Fortunately, we drove straight into him. We found 2 pistols in his car and one under the steering wheel. If I hadn't crashed into it, there would have been a gunfight tonight. The whole process was finished in just a few words. It seemed that the mission was easily completed, but in fact, it made the scouts hiding in the dark so nervous that they were sweating. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade were used to talking about the entire process of the mission in a casual manner. Only they knew the dangers involved. Yiqian was also used to their casual way of talking. In the future, she would be like them. No matter how dangerous the mission was, she would be able to talk about it in a few sentences. It took less than half an hour to drive from the old district to the new district. The hotel they checked into was none other than the Caesar Hotel operated by Jose. Before he got out of the car, he joked, "If we had known earlier, we would have stayed the night too." They couldn't stay there. Although they had successfully captured the Asian man and handed him over to the National Defense, there were still some small things that needed to be sorted out. They wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Chapter 3463. After Yi Qian left for the hotel, Bai He handed the item to Xia Jinyuan. Jade pendant. The commander-in-chief said to give this jade to you temporarily. Bai didn't come out to pick them up. He just didn't want Yi Qian to know the details, so he came up with an excuse. Xia Jinyuan took the jade pendant that helped Yi Zhifan rise from a village official to a provincial official. He gently rubbed the pattern on it with his fingers. It was very delicate and felt very good to the touch. This jade pendant was a love token from his future father-in-law to his mother-in-law. Who would have thought that it would be used by someone else? Not long after I gave the jade pendant to Jane Eyre's mother, something happened to me. Then, something happened to her mother. Later, it became a nightmare for Jane Eyre when she was young. Our family of 3 suffered because of it. It's obvious that it's not a good luck item. After you get it back from Sun Ying in the southern province, don't show it to Jane Eyre. Don't remind her of what happened when she was young and make her sad. Give it to me directly after you get it. I've also told your father that the jade pendant is private and can't be used as evidence. After I get it, I'll donate it to the National Museum. Although it's not a good luck item, it's still an old item from the palace. It should go back to where it came from. Before he came to the southern province, Father Fu secretly warned Xia Jinyuan. Since he had received his future father-in-law's instructions, Xia Jinyuan naturally obeyed. It was good to give it to the National Museum. The value of old items from the palace could no longer be measured by money. They were all cultural relics. It should go back to where it came from. This was the end. Ever since Father Fu found out that the jade pendant was still there, he had never thought of taking it back. The love token became the source of Yi Qian's suffering when he was young. Father Fu didn't know how to face it. It was better to donate it so that it wouldn't affect Yi Qian's mood. With Father Fu's instructions, Xia Jinyuan did not show it to Yi Qian. The next day, the 2 of them went to Martyrs Park, where Uncle Jin was buried. They first went to Uncle Jin's grave. Xia Jinyuan placed the flowers in his hand in front of the old man's tombstone, and together with Yi Qian, they saluted the old man solemnly before kneeling down together. Yi Qian kowtowed 3 times to the kind-looking old man in the black and white photo and told Uncle Jin everything that had happened in the past year. Yi Qian stayed for almost half an hour before he left. When they arrived at martyr's son Xu Weqing's grave, Yi Qian looked at his mother in the photo with a gentle smile. He kowtowed again and emphasized that the military had found the mastermind. Yi Qian was no longer as agitated as before. He spoke softly as if he was chatting. He even talked about Father Fu, the old man, and of course the man beside him. When they left, the cold wind blew through the delicate petals of the flowers. A few petals fluttered in the wind, sometimes high and sometimes low. In the end, they were swept away by the cold wind, as if they were carrying Yi Qian's words to their deceased relatives. Yi Qian looked at the petals that were swept away and smiled faintly. He asked the man beside him, "Captain Xia, do you think my mother can hear what I just said?" Of course, she couldn't hear it scientifically, but she could hear it because of the emotional sustenance. Holding her slightly cold hand, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "She can hear it because your mother-in-law has always lived in your heart. Of course, she can hear what you say." That's right. Her beloved mother had always lived in her heart and had never left. Of course, she could hear what she said. Chapter 3464. At noon, Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan needed to return to Beijing. They had originally planned to visit Principal Chun at the sniper base, but they realized they didn't have enough time. It would take them an hour and a half to drive from here to the sniper base, and it would take about 2.5 hours to get to the airport from the sniper base. The 1 p.m. flight was so tight that there wasn't any time left. If they really went there, they would definitely miss the flight. Ever since Principal Chun received the notice from the military, he had been staying at the sniper base and didn't go anywhere. He loved the army, loved training, and loved working with the sniper rifle that had been with him for his entire life. Even if he didn't leave the military base for the rest of his life, Principal Chun would still be happy. Furthermore, The base had just received a new batch of the latest large-caliber sniper rifles for various countries. As such, Principal Chun didn't want to leave the base even more. When Yi Qian called, Principal Chun was still talking to the two instructors at the base. He was enjoying himself and wasn't affected at all. When he received Yi Qian's call, Principal Chen's voice was as deep as a bell. Just hearing his voice made Yi Qian feel a lot more at ease. She was worried that Principal Chen's mood would be affected by his identity being exposed. So when she heard his voice, she immediately felt relieved. You don't have to rush over. I'm fine here. It's fine if I don't go out. I'm already at the age where I don't like to move around. I'm cooped up in the base every day, guarding the rifle and watching the soldiers train. I feel more at ease than ever. It's fine if your identity is exposed. I'm already so old, so what's there to be afraid of? I wasn't afraid when I was young, so I'm even less afraid now that I'm old. Even if she didn't ask anything, he could tell what the child was thinking just by listening to her voice when he was talking to her. Yi Jian was a kind girl who valued friendship and loyalty. She knew how to repay kindness. How could she not know what Yi Jian was worried about? She really didn't have to worry. It wasn't a big deal if he didn't go out. He wasn't willing to leave the army anyway. Principal Chun didn't have a shadow in his heart. He laughed and said, I've decided to stay here. I won't go anywhere. I'll stay here and guard the base. Girl, this is Uncle Chen's roots, Uncle Chen's home. My home and roots are both here. Uncle Chun will guard it happily. You, don't worry about me. Take good care of yourself. Come and visit Uncle Chun when you're free. If you're not, call me once in a while to tell me that you're safe. I'll be happy to know how you're doing. Principal Chun, who had walked through the battlefield of life and death, was very open-minded. He looked at everything indifferently, even life and death. It was fine if his identity was exposed, but he was worried that Yi Qian would be implicated. When Yi Qian said that he didn't have time to come over, it was exactly what he wanted. Don't come over for the next 1 or 2 years. Uncle Chun isn't worried about his identity being exposed, but he's worried about you. Sunning is so close to you. If she lets the cat out of the bag and implicates you, that's what I'm most worried about. Yi Qian wasn't worried about herself at all. She was studying in the strict military academy. It was very difficult for the outside world to affect her. If someone really came to cause trouble for her, she would be happy. She would be more than happy to divert the attention from Uncle Chun to her and shield Uncle Chun from the storm. But Yi Qian couldn't say these words to Principal Chun. If he did, Principal Chun would be even more worried. She smiled and said, Uncle Chun, don't worry. Sun Ying's side is clean. They didn't find anything on my side either. Take good care of yourself. I'll definitely come and visit you when I have time. Chapter 3465. Principal Chun did not directly say that Sun Ying had been taken care of. He only vaguely mentioned it. His eyes were filled with kindness. His smile faded a little, but his tone did not change as he said with a smile, It's good that you didn't find anything. You have to work harder in the future. Don't let the past hold you back. Let bygones be bygones. Now that you've dealt with it, you have to put the past behind you. Walk well and look forward with every step you take. Do you understand? Principal Chun, who had no children, raised Yi Qian step by step. In his heart, Yi Qian was his daughter. Every time he spoke to Yi Qian, he would guide Yi Qian like a father. He would guide Yi Qian with his life experience so that Yi Qian would not go astray. Therefore, in this life, Yi Qian was lucky to have met Uncle Jin and Principal Chun. Although she could not get to where she was today without her own efforts, without the careful guidance and guidance of these two elders, Yi Qian would not be where she was today. Yi Qian, with a slight smile on her face, listened quietly. She humbly accepted the teachings without the slightest hint of impatience. Then, she smiled and said, Don't worry, I'll remember it all. I'll walk my own path well in the future. I won't let you down, and I won't let myself down. Yi Qian was actually a girl who did not need much concern from an adult. She would definitely do whatever she said. This made Principal Chun feel very reassured. The child that he had raised with his own hands was now flying on her own. Although he was a little reluctant, he was more proud of her. Good child, Uncle Chun believes in you. You will definitely go further and further. You don't need to disappoint others. You only need to remember not to let yourself down. The young eagle had grown up and had a pair of wings that allowed her to fly freely. As an elder, all he had to do was watch from home. After talking to Principal Chun for about 20 minutes, Yi Qian only said things that could reassure Principal Chun. Not only did she say this, but she also hinted to Xia Jinyuan to say the same thing, so that Principal Chun could feel at ease. Upon receiving his girlfriend's instructions, Lieutenant Colonel Xia followed her instructions to comfort Principal Chun and express his sincerity, saying that he would take good care of Yi Qian and not let her suffer. There was no way to guarantee that Yi Qian would not suffer. Every soldier had to endure hardships, especially as a Special Forces soldier. The hardships he had to endure were many times more than the average soldier. After talking to Principal Chun and understanding the situation, the smile on Yi Qian's face became much brighter. When Xia Jinyuan saw this, he couldn't help but lean over and secretly kiss him. The smile on his handsome face was so gentle that water could be wrung out of it. However, once they were on the plane, Xia Jinyuan could not bring himself to smile. Because, looking at the name Yi Qian wrote for him, the smile on Lieutenant Colonel Xia's face froze a little. He looked up at his girlfriend, who had been smiling all this while, but was still secretly wondering who the mastermind was. Lieutenant Colonel Xia sighed softly. You guessed right. Yi Jian chuckled. It's not that I guessed it. Uncle told me before. However, he avoided the topic during the meeting. Plus, Uncle said that there was a high possibility, but everything was still under investigation, so I mistakenly thought that the previous investigation was wrong. You mentioned that the person I knew the mastermind, so I thought about what Uncle said and was certain that it was him. I didn't expect that in the end, it was still him. Looking down at the name written on the paper, Yi Qian smiled bitterly. What is my brother going to do now? Chapter 3466. Xia Jinyuan's eyes flickered. If it was only Li Chuhai, he could have just mentioned it during the meeting. However, his little fox knew the person who killed his future mother-in-law and had helped her before. Why did he help his little fox? Because this person felt guilty. Why did the military stop the National Defense Committee and the Military Commission from telling Yi Qian who the real shooter was? It was because Yi Qian had always thought that this person had helped her a lot. In fact, this person had indeed helped her a lot. Even before he left the military, he was still helping her. He wasn't a bad person because he was also being used. After he was arrested, the first thing he said when he saw the case file was, Sun Xueqing wasn't a spy. Until he was arrested, he still thought that Sun Xueqing was a spy. Therefore, the military wanted to keep it a secret for the time being. They wanted to find a suitable opportunity to tell her the whole story and why Sun Xueqing was shot in her own territory. It made sense for the military to avoid telling her. When he found out, he couldn't accept it, let alone Yi Qian, who had received a lot of help from him. Yi Qian looked down at the name written on the paper and frowned slightly. He said softly, But there's something I don't understand. Since they already told me, why did they deliberately avoid telling me during the meeting? His girlfriend was too smart. Yes, he was a little scared now. He had to change the topic and stop her from guessing. She had already guessed the main point. If she continued to guess, even as her captain, he couldn't take it anymore. Xia Jinyuan looked at the piece of paper with the name Li Chuhai written on it. He reached out and took the piece of paper. He slowly tore it into pieces and put it in his pocket. Don't think about it. The military might not tell you now, but doesn't mean they won't tell you in the future. Also, his slender fingers held Yi Qian's hand, and he continued writing. Li Chuhai is indeed the mastermind. It's good that you know. You don't have to worry about Big Brother. He doesn't have a good relationship with his family. It could be said that if the Fu family and the Li family were to fall out, he would definitely choose the Fu family and not the Li family. So, you don't have to worry about him. Yi Qian pursed his lips. He was not reassured by Xia Jinyuan's words. No matter how bad her relationship with her family was, and how close her brother was to the Fu family, Li Chuhai was her brother's uncle. How could he not affect her brother? She pursed her lips slightly. Xia Jinyuan knew that she was still worried. After thinking for a while, he simply told Yi Jian about the situation in the Li family. This person is separated from eldest brother by a layer. They are not blood-related uncles. He is just an uncle born from the second wife. The second wife's uncle? Yi Qian looked up and blinked again. There was too much information in this. Xia Jinyuan picked up a pen and a piece of paper and wrote, "They are children of 2 wives. Brother's father was born of his first wife, and this person was born of his second wife. Madam Li was born of Li Chuhai's second wife. Big brother's father and the great painter Li were born of his first wife. Therefore, you don't have to worry about Big Brother." Yi Qian did not know about these things. When he heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief. So there was still a difference. Xia Jinyuan then wrote, "An outsider came in and took over the magpie's nest." This time, the topic was successfully changed. Yi Qian stared at these words, and his dark eyes widened slightly. Chapter 3467. The mistress was the mistress, which meant that old Madam Li was the mistress back then. Was this one of the reasons why Big Brother and the Li family were not close? If that was the case, then she really did not have to worry. After knowing the complicated relationship between the Li family and the Li family, Yi Qian could not help but chuckle. Previously, when Commander-in-Chief Xiao mentioned that Li Chuhai might be the mastermind, her first reaction was to not tell her father and not let Big Brother know. Now, there was no need to worry. It did not matter if Big Brother or father knew. Anyway, this person was not close to Big Brother. When Xia Jinyuan saw that her frown had relaxed, he tore up the paper with the words on it and put it in his pocket. Then, he held her hand again and said helplessly, "Sometimes you shouldn't think about it alone. If you think too much, your brain will be tired." "Are you relieved now?" "Yes, I'm relieved." Yi Qian nodded and looked around. Then, she leaned her head on Xia Jinyuan's broad shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I can sleep for a while now." He was not wearing his military uniform and was not afraid of being recognized. He could totally date openly. When she leaned over, Xia Jinyuan adjusted his sitting position so that she could rest more comfortably. He looked down and saw that she was smiling gently. He could not help but smile and rubbed his chin against her head. He said softly, "Go to sleep. We will reach the capital in about an hour." There was a huge uproar in the capital, especially in the Li family and the Du family. The 2 families did not sleep for a moment since last night. In the middle of winter, Madam Li was so anxious that she had blisters at the corner of her mouth. She could not make any phone calls, and her personal freedom was restricted. Even her daughter, Du Jiai, could not go out and could only stay at home. Originally, they were going to go to the Qin family. But now, he couldn't even leave the house. Du Jiai, who was sitting on the sofa, was tense. She had been sitting there motionlessly for several hours. Madam Li picked up the landline from time to time and slammed it down. After a while, Du Jiai said gloomily, "Mom, stop calling. I already said that I can't make any calls. If you have the time to think about calling, why don't you think about where little uncle is? The most important thing now is to find little uncle and put everything else aside. Don't even think about going to the Qin family. Her uncle must have committed a serious crime this time. Otherwise, there would not be people from the army watching over the house. I have to call your father and ask him. Since something big happened to your uncle, why didn't your father send you any message? You'll have to ask your father." Madam Li was worried about her brother, but she was not worried about anything else. Little is little uncle. What crime could he have committed? Even if you want to commit murder and arson, there should be a shadow. There's no sign of him at all. Why are our movements restricted as well? If I don't figure out what's going on, I won't feel at ease. We have to figure it out. Du Jiai's face darkened. "Mom, now is not the time to figure out what happened to little uncle. We have to find him first. Don't get the main point wrong. Also, why hasn't Dad come back yet? Why hasn't Brother and his family come back? Even little brother hasn't come back. Mom, if little uncle is not found, Dad, Brother, and little brother can't come back. Who are you worried about?" Chapter 3468. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Li was not worried about the safety of her husband and son at all. Seeing her daughter's worried face, she laughed. "With your Auntie Zhao's ex-husband around, your father won't break any rules. He doesn't dare. He has to be more cautious than your Auntie Zhao's ex-husband." Your father has been suppressed by your Annie Zhao's ex-husband all his life. He only wants to surpass him. How can he do something that will ruin his future? Don't worry about your father. It is very likely that he will be separated from the family temporarily. As for your brother, you don't have to worry. Every time your brother calls home, I hear it clearly. He always says that your brother has to abide by the law and must not do anything personal. As for your brother, I know that there won't be a big problem, but there will be a small problem. When you were around, your brother was troubled enough. Du Jai couldn't help biting her lower lip. If she had known that this day would come, she wouldn't have troubled her brother in the past. Mom, don't mention my past. It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Besides, although I trouble my brother, I had a good reason for everything, and I was punished after an investigation. I can stand the test. It was all about those who were not pleasing to the eye, or those who were stronger than her, but who were against her. For example, those who came from powerful families, such as Zhou Yijin, who was Xia Jinyuan's cousin. Her mother and father were both influential and powerful. Even if she didn't like them, she wouldn't touch them. She knew very well who should be moved and who should not be moved. Therefore, even though Du Jia had once troubled her eldest son, Madame Li was not worried that her eldest son would be investigated. The punishment was made after an investigation. It was not something that her daughter made up. If they were really investigated, many people would be lifting a rock and smashing their own feet. Therefore, she didn't need to worry about her eldest son. As for her second son, she didn't need to worry about him either. He worked in the company and didn't get involved in politics or the army. There was nothing to worry about. When Mrs. Li learned that Li Chuhai was in trouble, she didn't panic at all. She had done many things in the past, but she had never asked her husband to participate in any of them. She had even handled some things behind her husband's back. Now that she thought about it, she was a little worried. Mrs. Li, who slowly sat back on the sofa, looked a little dignified. If they really wanted to investigate carefully, she would not be able to withstand the investigation. She was afraid that someone would take the opportunity to seize power and blame her husband for what she had done. Xia Xinhui was not the only one keeping an eye on her husband. There were several others. Seeing this, Du Jiai's already uneasy heart began to tremble. Mommy, what's wrong? Have you thought of anything? Do you know where my uncle is? If you know, you must tell the higher-ups. Don't hide anything from them. Do you hear me? Du Jai clenched her fists and growled at the end of her sentence. She definitely couldn't hide it. Nothing must happen to the head of the family because of her uncle. Jai, go and see if he can get out. Madame Li seemed to have come up with a countermeasure as she raised her hand slightly to signal for Du Jai to calm down. It's not your uncle. Mom needs to get some information from your Auntie Xiao. If you're able to get out of here, look for your Auntie Xiao directly and ask her for help. Ask Aunt Xiao to help me? Du Jai didn't quite understand what she was playing at. She frowned and asked, what does Aunt Xiao know? Now she only drinks tea, paints, and attends salons every day. How can she know what's going on? Chapter 3469. She would ask Auntie Xiao where the dining environment was good, which store had a new style of clothing, which store was good for her skincare. It was more appropriate to ask her something like that. Du Jai directly expressed her doubts when she asked about the big issues above. Mrs. Li sneered. Your Auntie Xiao doesn't know about the big issues above, but your Auntie Zhao's ex-husband knows. As long as you ask, even if it's just one sentence, it's fine. Okay, I'll try now. Try what? Don't you think the outside world is chaotic enough? Do you want to put yourself in danger? Suddenly, the deputy chief of staff, Du's roar came from the entrance of the living room. His voice was like thunder, and it shocked the mother and daughter who were sitting in the living room and talking in low voices. They didn't notice if anyone had come in, and they were so shocked that their hearts skipped a beat. Old Du, Dad. When the mother and daughter saw that the deputy chief of staff, Du, suddenly came home, they couldn't help but be happy. Du Jai was indeed a dancer. She got up lightly and ran to her father like a lark. Dad, you're finally back. Mom and I are at home, and we don't know what's going on outside. There was unspeakable joy on his face. The seriousness just now was swept away and became extremely relaxed. The backbone of the family was back. Everything could be settled through discussion. The deputy chief of staff, Du, was a little embarrassed. The tie in his military uniform was pulled crooked, and the buttons of his shirt were unbuttoned. His complexion was even worse. It was as if there was a layer of dust on his face. After listening for a while, he first glared at Mrs. Li and then said to Du Jiai, "It's none of your business. Go back to your room. Dad and your mom have something to talk about. You can't listen." Such a big thing had happened. It would be best if his daughter didn't know. If she were to be questioned, it would be easy for her to get away. Now, it was his audacious wife who almost got him killed. Du Jiai saw this scene and said timidly, "Oh." She looked at Mrs. Li uneasily and then slowly turned to walk to her room. "Close the door and don't eavesdrop." Deputy Chief of Staff Du shouted coldly again. Du Jiai, who originally wanted to do the same, stopped in her tracks. She quickly nodded and went back to her room, closing the door and locking it. Hearing the sound of the door being locked, Deputy Chief of Staff Du retracted his gaze and stared at his wife gloomily. He gritted his teeth and said, "Li Changlan, how many good things have you done behind my back? Tell me one by one, especially anything related to Li Chuhai. Tell me everything you want to know." The Deputy Chief of Staff Du was so angry that he even cursed. Madame Li's face stiffened, but the usually calm Madame Li sat back on the sofa calmly and raised her eyes slightly. There was nothing strange about her exquisitely made-up face. She said lightly, "I have indeed done a lot of good things. Which good thing do you want to hear? The donation? Li Chenglan, if it weren't for Xia Xin standing up for me today, I would have been F***king fired and sent to jail on the spot. Are you still playing dumb with me here?" The Deputy Chief of Staff Du was so angry that his face turned red. He kicked the wooden coffee table, and the vase with flowers on it fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was a carpet under the coffee table, and the vase was strong and didn't break. However, the flowers were all over the floor, and the water soaked the carpet. Chapter 3470. Du Jiai, who had her ear pressed against the door, heard the sound of something being kicked. She jerked her shoulders and threw herself onto her bed as if she was fleeing. Her heart was thumping madly, unable to calm down for a long time. Afterward, Du Jiai gently got down from the bed and tiptoed to the door. She unlocked the door bit by bit, her movements gentle and slow as she opened the door sliver. What happened to Uncle that made Dad so angry? Du Jiai had never seen her father lose his temper at her mother. Today, he suddenly exploded because of her uncle's matter. Du Jiai gently bit her lower lip as she pressed her ear against the slightly ajar door. Mrs. Li wasn't afraid at all. She bent down to pick up the vase and the flowers that had fallen out. Then, she put the flowers she had arranged this morning back into the vase one by one. "Are you done? Just say what you want to say. Don't play this game in front of me. You know me. When I was young, I didn't fall for it. Now, I'm in my 60s and my grandson is several years old. Do you think I'll fall for it? Since Xia Xinhui stood out to speak for you, then you'll be fine. Since you're fine, why are you still angry? I was worried when you didn't come back. Just now, I was going to ask Jiai to sound out Aunt Xiao. Now that you're home, you're fine, and you haven't been fired, why are you still angry with me? What good did I do? Old Du, I've done a lot of good things for decades. Now, if you ask me to list them one by one, I'm afraid you won't remember them. Why don't you ask the guard to come in? Or ask your confidential documents to come over and let them take a pen and paper to write them down." She arranged the flowers elegantly, as if everything around her had nothing to do with her. She didn't need to panic about things that weren't important. She just lived her life calmly. Mrs. Li had been very powerful when she was young. Now she was in her 60s. Her arrogance when she was young had long settled into her bones. Usually, she was calm and easy to talk to. But when she was ruthless, she was just like Sun Ying. It was as easy as stepping on someone's clothes to deal with a 20-year-old girl. Old age didn't mean that her temperament had changed. Instead, she had become more and more capable of controlling her temper. Ordinary people couldn't figure her out at all. Even the Deputy Chief of Staff, Du, felt deeply helpless. Although he was helpless, the anger in his heart. He sat back on the sofa angrily and said something that made Mrs. Li purse her lips. All the assets of Li Chuhai's companies in China, including all the liquid assets and bank deposits. Then she said something that made Mrs. Lee's hands clenched. He was involved in a murder case and was the main culprit in the underground market for the past 20 years. What he has committed crimes, committed intolerable by law. Lee's son's rights, Lee's family member. Lee Chenglan, I'm lucky to come back today. You really have to thank Xia Xinhui. He stood up and said that he didn't believe that I would be involved in these things that would endanger the country. I really have to thank him today. Otherwise, there would only be one word: miserable. Since he was suddenly called to the conference room at 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, he had been interrogated until 6 o'clock in the morning. He had been interrogated all night and didn't even have a sip of water. Until today, he was told that he could go home temporarily. It made him, the deputy chief of staff, feel like he had escaped from a disaster. Chapter 3471. When the deputy chief of staff returned home, he still had a lingering fear in his heart. He had calmed down, but when he heard Mrs. Lee's words, he burst into anger. In his wife's heart, her husband was far inferior to his brother-in-law. Thinking of the things he was asked, each of which used his wife as a breakthrough to interrogate him, the deputy chief of staff was furious. It seemed that his good wife had really done a lot of good things behind his back. Mrs. Lee, who was not as calm as she looked, asked forcefully, "Have you investigated these things carefully? Who said that Chu Hai had done something harmful to the country? Who said that he had been running the underground market abroad? Are these people not close to you? How much have they investigated? How much do they know? Also, have you asked my father? Our Lee family is upright and upright. How could we do something harmful to the country? I don't believe it. This is not a crime that can be determined by their lips. Where's the evidence? Take out the evidence and let my father have a look." When it came to Old Man Lee, Mrs. Lee suddenly became more and more confident. She, no matter what, did not believe that her own brother had done something that could not be tolerated by the country's law. Also, with my brother's identity and family background, why would he need to murder other people's lives? What a joke. What a big joke. He is a member of the Lee family. The Lee family's ancestors were warlords. My brother can have whatever he wants. Why would he need to murder other people's lives? Don't make me laugh. I'm going to ask now. Who dares to frame my brother? Who dares to pour dirty water on my Lee family? Mrs. Lee was not just saying it casually. She slapped the sofa's armrest and stood up. She was about to rush out and ask for an explanation. He finally knew why she had the confidence to do those good things. Good. Really good. Originally, she thought that as long as Old Man Lee was around, everything would be fine, and she could do whatever she wanted. When Deputy Chief of Staff raised his hand and pointed at the door, his hand was trembling. Go, and ask your grandpa how much he knows. Don't go to the Lee family. Go to the Military Disciplinary Committee and ask. Your old man is currently drinking tea at the Military Disciplinary Committee and looking at the evidence. Look through? Of course, he had to let the old master have a look. If you don't let old master take a look, Lee Chenglan, I'm afraid the entire capital will be turned upside down because of you. Du Jiai's entire body went limp on the floor. Little uncle did something that cannot be tolerated by the nation's laws. Even grandfather was invited to the Military Disciplinary Committee. This matter has blown up. Things were getting out of hand. No, this matter was the Lee family's business. It had nothing to do with the Du family. Without any hesitation, Du Jiai, whose limbs were weak, almost crawled and rolled out of her room. Then she hugged Mrs. Lee, who really wanted to find someone to ask for an explanation, and cried, "Mom, you can't ask about this matter. You can't ask. The Lee family is the Lee family, and our family is our family. You still want to stand up? Didn't you see that Dad almost couldn't come back? You can't stand up for this matter. You have to stay at home and don't go anywhere. Grandfather has been asked to go out. What's the use of you going out? If little uncle is really wronged, with Grandpa around, nothing will happen to him. Mom, I beg you, just stay at home and don't go anywhere, okay?" Chapter 3472. How could Madame Lee be so impulsive at such an old age? It could be said that Madame Lee played a big part in helping her husband get to where he was today by relying on her family. How could such a scheming and resourceful person be impulsive? Impulsiveness was the devil that would destroy everything. Madame Lee had reached where she was today. Although she was quite capable and resourceful, she was never impulsive. Du Jiayi was very much like Madame Lee. No matter how big the matter was, no matter how angry she was in her heart, she would never show it in front of others. She would only take revenge quietly. At this moment, she hugged Madame Lee and cried in fear. She wanted to appease Madame Lee, who was angry, in case she did something irreparable. As soon as she cried, Madame Lee stopped and looked at her husband coldly. She said coldly, "Old Du, don't you know why you can reach where you are today? My father treated you well, didn't he? Chu Hai also treated you well, didn't he? Our Lee family also treated you well. Now, my father was asked to leave, but you came back to be angry with me instead of finding a way to deal with him first. Old Du, since you relied on the power of the Lee family to come out from the grassroots, do you really think that people will forget that you are the son-in-law of the Lee family because these people are estranged from the Lee family?" Speaking of which, the deputy chief of staff Du's face was a little twisted. He knew that he relied on the Lee family, so he had been very good to Old Man Lee all these years. However, Old Master Lee had never looked him in the eye. He even said coldly in the study, "I'm not being nice to you. I'm only helping you because of Chung Lan. You came from a peasant background. If Chung Lan didn't take a fancy to you, why would I help you? Now that I have helped you, I don't need you to repay me. I just hope that you can take care of Chu Hai in the future." Even if it had been more than 10 years, he still remembered that tone clearly. What he said was all right. He was born in the countryside, and he did rely on the Lee family to help him. He admitted all these and had never denied it. But she had never thought that he would mention these things in such a high and mighty tone. The deputy chief of staff, Du, took a deep breath and said with a livid face, "I didn't forget that I'm the son-in-law of the Lee family. Others won't forget it either. Otherwise, today wouldn't have happened. Don't worry. No matter how Old Man Lee looks down on me, I'm still a member of the Lee family in the eyes of others. As long as something happens to the Lee family, I can't stay out of it. I know this better than you. I don't need you to remind me. It's good that you're clear about it. I was afraid that you would lose your mind from anger and vent your anger on me and Jiayi when you return." The corners of Madame Lee's mouth twitched coldly. At this moment, she was no longer as furious as before. In an instant, she was so calm that there was no trace of anger left on her face. Du Jiayi, who was hugging her waist, looked up at her unblinkingly and asked in a low voice, "Mom, what are you trying to do?" She couldn't even guess what he was planning to do with all this talk of wind and rain. She had never seen anyone who could fly into a rage 1 second and be as calm as a mirror the next. Faced with her daughter's question, Madame Lee turned around and tapped her daughter's forehead with a finger. She smiled and said, "Don't you feel embarrassed to make such a big fuss over such a small matter? And you're still crying. What's there to cry about? Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Since there's a reason for everything, there will be a way to resolve it. Can crying, throwing a tantrum, and getting angry solve the problem? Look at your father. He's yelling and screaming when he gets home. Ask him if he has any ideas. Ask him." Chapter 3473. Mrs. Lee didn't care about her husband. Instead, she taught her daughter what to do first. Her husband was old and had his own way of dealing with things. But her daughter was different. She was still young and could absorb all kinds of good things like a sponge that was not yet full. Teaching a daughter was as important as teaching a son. If the son was taught well, the family would prosper. If the daughter was taught well, she could bring good fortune to the future generations. She could also stand firm in front of her husband and have an unshakable position in her husband's family. It had to be said that Mrs. Lee was very good at teaching children. She was much better than son Dongqing, who only knew how to spoil her daughter and didn't know how to educate her daughter. Du Jiayi listened to Mrs. Lee's words all the time. Not only did she listen, but she could also draw inferences. Blinking her eyes, Du Jiayi loosened her hands from Mrs. Lee's waist. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded. I know. I was scared by you just now. I was a little anxious, so I cried. Mrs. Lee saw that her daughter was enlightened. There was a smile on her calm face. Even if you are anxious, you have to keep it in your heart. You can't let others see that you are anxious from your face. If it is obvious on your face, you have lost 3 points before you make a move. When you make a move, others may make a move before you. At this time, you have lost 3 points again. This is the price of impulsiveness. Before you make a move, you have lost 6 points. Being calm and collected, being brave and resourceful, and seeking benefits for herself. This was Mrs. Lee's way of dealing with things for decades, and it deeply affected her 2 daughters. However, her 2 sons didn't follow Mrs. Lee's way of dealing with things. After all, these were women's means. It was not appropriate to put them in a group of men. Deputy Chief of Staff Du was also speechless now. He sat back on the sofa with a livid face. No one knew what he was thinking. Du Jai looked at them and whispered, "Dad, Mom, you have good talk. I will go back to my room first." After that, she added uneasily, "Dad, Mom won't be so impulsive. After all, Uncle's business is not a trivial matter. How can Mom get involved? Right, Mom?" Both of them were worried, so they could only remind her, "All right, that's your dad's problem. You just have to take good care of yourself, find a good son-in-law for your parents, and marry yourself off beautifully." Madame Lee did not want her daughter to know too much. She had even invited her father over, so what her younger brother had done was indeed not a trivial matter. Someone else had some evidence. What he was doing now was not in a hurry to cut ties with the Lee family. The Du family and the Lee family were one. Everyone knew that old Du was the son-in-law of the Lee family, and the words Lee family were pinned on his back. How could he cut ties with them? She was afraid that her husband would be worried about being fired and rush to cut ties with the Lee family. This was a bad move that would make outsiders suspect that the Du family was not innocent. The most important thing right now was to cooperate with the investigation and let everyone see that her husband's attitude toward his younger brother, Lee Chu-hai, was fair and just. Her surname was Lee, but that was her maiden family. The Du family was her home. For the sake of her children, she had to be cautious. How could she be so impulsive as to stand up for the Lee family? The old master was experienced in doing things. As long as there was no news from the Lee family, there was no need for a married woman like her to take the lead. There were still 2 older brothers. Let them take the lead first. She would go to the side and observe the situation for the time being. Chapter 3474. When the Deputy Chief of Staff Du found out about his wife's plan, he heaved a long sigh of relief. His sour expression slowly disappeared. In the end, he even apologized to Mrs. Lee for throwing a tantrum when he returned home. In the end, they naturally got along well and closed the door to discuss countermeasures. Commander-in-Chief Xia was also not very calm, but there was nothing to worry about. It was all because of Lee Chu-hai's escape. At 4 p.m., Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan arrived at the military headquarters. Commander-in-Chief Xia explained the current situation to them. Xia Jinyuan might indeed have to go abroad, but it was not to catch Lee Chu-hai, but to do something else. When Yi Qian heard that the Deputy Chief of Staff Du was only released yesterday morning, he subconsciously thought of Mrs. Lee. Mrs. Lee and Lee Chu-hai were siblings, and Mrs. Lee had used her family's connections to do a lot of things, including opening the back door for Sun Ing to enter the army. These were all evidence. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia did not mention what would happen to Mrs. Lee, so Yi Qian did not ask further. Instead, Xia Jinyuan brought it up first. His handsome face was slightly cold as he said, "Since there is no problem with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du, should we focus on investigating Mrs. Lee? She has a good relationship with Lee Chu-hai." After Lee Chu-hai's son and daughter returned to the country, they were all arranged by her. Now that Lee Chu-hai has escaped, his children are still in the country. Mrs. Lee is very likely to contact Lee Chu-hai through them. Keep a close eye on Mrs. Lee and his children. There should be some clues. Just as he finished speaking, Commander-in-Chief Xia sighed and said, "A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. The children that Lee Chu-hai brought back to the country are not his biological children. They're just adopted abroad. His biological children are still abroad and are well protected. This news came as a surprise to both Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. Even the children that came back with him were not his biological children. Li Chuhai was extremely cunning and scheming. From the looks of it, he had been planning for a backup plan from the moment he decided to return to the country. He had never thought of returning to the country peacefully. From the beginning, he came back to stir up trouble. Why did he return to the country after putting in so much effort? After a short pause, Yi Qian asked, "Does Madame Li know?" Based on the current investigation, she doesn't know. Even old man Li doesn't know. Ever since Li Chuhai returned to the country, he never thought of staying in the country for long. Commander-in-Chief Xia had a sharp look in his eyes as he crossed his fingers and rested them on the desk. Dressed in his military uniform, he had an astonishingly cold and sharp aura. Now that the entire territory has been sealed off, even the most cunning rabbit has nowhere to hide. Yi Qian's heart was pounding. If Li Chuhai could escape under the surveillance of several parties, he must have a way out. Moreover, this way of escape was very well hidden, and only he knew about it. He won't contact Madame Li, nor will he contact the adopted children. Madame Li, the adopted children, and even old Master Li are just a cover to attract attention. Yi Qian said softly and clenched his fists slightly. Commander-in-Chief, Li Chuhai won't let us catch him easily. The world is big. With his ability, it's too easy for him to find a place to hide. If he escapes, it will be very difficult to find him again, Commander-in-Chief. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at Yi Qian, who had pointed out the key points one by one. After a while, Commander-in-Chief Xia said with a faint smile, "You don't have enough confidence. Are you afraid that he will escape?" Chapter 3475. How could she not be afraid? He had managed to escape right under her nose, so of course she was afraid that he would run further and further away. Yi Qian nodded her head, indicating that she was indeed afraid. Xia Jinyuan, who was looking down, saw that her hands were clenched so tightly that the veins on the back of her hands looked like they were about to burst out of her skin. He secretly reached out and wrapped his hand around the back of her hand, gently rubbing it with his thumb. No matter how powerful Li Chuhai is, he's still in the country. It might be difficult to catch him outside the country, but as long as he's still in the country, he won't be able to escape too far. The entire capital has been under lockdown since last night, and it's still under lockdown even now. Don't worry, he won't be able to get far. Perhaps it was because his hand was too warm, or perhaps it was because his tone was quite certain. But Yi Qian, who had always believed in him, looked up with trembling eyes. She saw a pair of eyes that were as deep as the sea staring back at her with a faint smile. His gaze was warm and calm, as if all problems would be solved with him around. Commander-in-Chief Xia saw that Yi Qian's tense expression was slowly relaxing because of his little rascal. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, as this was the first time they had met. Could it be that the commander-in-chief and his future father-in-law's words were not as effective as old Six words? This was really... Sigh. He didn't even know what to say. Yi Qian thought about it and agreed. As long as Li Chuhai was still in the country, there was no need to worry about not being able to catch him. With the military's capabilities, if they couldn't even catch one person, then Yi Qian didn't think too much about it. She secretly adjusted her emotions and sat up straight. As for her small hand that was wrapped by Xia Jinyuan's large hand, yes, continued to be wrapped. She couldn't pull it out even if she wanted to. If she tried to do something sneaky under the commander-in-chief's nose and was tightly wrapped, it would take a lot of effort to pull it out. If she moved her arm and the commander-in-chief's torch-like eyes saw through her, it would be even more embarrassing. Xia Jinyuan smiled to himself when he saw that she didn't dare to move. He raised his eyebrows calmly when he received a glare from Commander-in-Chief Xia. Commander-in-Chief Xia was not glaring at them because he had noticed their little actions. He simply felt that Xia Jinyuan was an eyesore. It was beyond his expectations that Xia Jinyuan had such a great influence on Yi Qian. The commander-in-chief did not notice their little movements, but Major General Yang, who had knocked on the door due to an emergency, immediately pushed the door open and entered. He pushed the door open and entered. He saw Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting opposite the commander-in-chief, quickly withdraw his hand from Yi Qian. Yi Qian's expression was obviously stiff. He didn't even need to look at Xia Jinyuan to know that the two of them were secretly doing something. Major General Yang would usually make fun of them, but he didn't have the time or the mood to do so now. He simply pretended that he didn't notice anything and strode in. Commander-in-Chief, we've locked onto Li Chuhai's general direction. He escaped immediately after receiving the signal. He didn't have any time to prepare. It seems that he was always ready to escape as soon as something happened. Because he was always ready, he didn't even need to pack up when something really happened. He left as soon as he received the signal. He didn't even waste a second. Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan stood up at the same time and leaned against the desk so that Major General Yang could stand in front of Commander-in-Chief Xia and report. This person is very well prepared. We now suspect that the place he escaped to has a certain amount of illegal forces. Although we've locked onto the area, we still need to evacuate the nearby villagers. Major General Yang's report made Commander-in-Chief Xia frown. Chapter 3476. Yi Qian's fingers twitched slightly. If they needed to send someone over, she wanted to apply to join the operation. She wanted to catch the mastermind behind her mother's death with her own hands. She also wanted to see the person who ruined her previous life get what he deserved. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia and Major General Yang did not have such thoughts. Since Li Chuhai was deliberately targeting Yi Qian and was now surrounded by the military, they did not know if he would do anything crazy. Therefore, even if Yi Qian's face said, "I want to go," the two leaders ignored her. Even Xia Jinyuan did not participate in this operation. Who knew if he would recognize Xia Jinyuan? To be safe, the two of them did not participate in this operation. After leaving the military headquarters, Yi Qian was a little discouraged. Xia Jinyuan rubbed her head and laughed. "It's written all over your face. You really can't go this time. Don't forget that Li Chuhai followed you." Just now, Major General Yang also said that there are likely to be illegal forces around him. "If you go, I really don't know if there will be any accidents. Major General Yang will not let you take the risk of foreseeable dangers. It took a lot of effort to train you. From the age of 14 to 21 this year, it took 7 years to train a female Special Forces soldier. If anything happens to you, Yi Jian, it won't be a personal loss, but a loss for the country. Major General Yang does not dare to take this risk, and neither do I. I don't dare to let you go. Even if the two leaders agreed to let you go, I would have tried my best to stop you. If something happened to her, it would not only be 1 or 2 people who would be sad, but also many of her comrades. Mother-in-law has already been killed by Li Chuhai. Silly girl, you only want to kill your enemy. But have you forgotten about your father-in-law and the old master? They definitely won't let you confront Li Chuhai head-on. Some things should be avoided if possible. You don't have to do everything yourself. Do you understand?" Xia Jinyuan knew very well that Yi Qian wanted to seek justice for martyr son Xueqing. She had waited for 7 years and finally found out who the mastermind was. Now that she had the chance to kill her enemy with her own hands, he could understand how she felt. Understanding was one thing, but logic told him that he could not let her pass. Yi Qian nodded lightly and sighed. "I'm a little disappointed, but after thinking about it, forget it. It's better to stay in the capital." As soon as sunning was done, she immediately went to surround Li Chuhai. "Let's split up and not mix together. There's still a few days left. I plan to go home and spend some time with Grandpa and Dad. And if you can't return to the base, then stay in the capital and accompany your family. I'll send you back to Dangwei Garden first." Xia Jinyuan flagged down a taxi and went to Dangwei Garden first. Halfway there, he received a text message on his phone. Xia Jinyuan looked at the time and said softly. He had wanted to spend some time with his future father-in-law and old master at the Fu family's house. But when he received the text, he did not have much time left. Major General Yang had sent a text message saying that he needed to lead a team overseas. They would leave at 11 o'clock tonight, and the return date was not set. When they arrived at Dangwei Garden, Xia Jinyuan did not ask the driver to leave. Yi Qian knew what was going on when he got out of the car. You're going out? For how many days? I don't know. I will contact you when I come back. Xia Jinyuan lowered his head and kissed Yi Qian. Rest well for the next few days. You must be tired. You can rest well. As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan, who was reluctant to let her go, simply pulled his girlfriend into his arms. Chapter 3477. He tightened his arms and hugged Yi Qian tightly. His lips touched Yi Qian's earlobe, and he said in a low and gentle voice, "Take a walk with father-in-law, chat with grandfather, and play chess. They will be very happy. Don't think too much about other things. If anything happens, the higher-ups will contact you. Once Li Chuhai's matter is settled, you can officially return to the Fu family soon." Yi Qian wrapped her arms around his strong waist. She would not let him worry, since he was about to go on a mission. She smiled and said, "Yes, I also want to accompany father and grandfather. When the time comes, I will go to the old mansion to visit Grandma Xia and Grandfather Xia. It was rude of me to rush things this time." "That's even better. Grandfather and grandmother like sixth brother's daughter-in-law the most. It would be best if you could accompany them on my behalf." With the help of his family, he was not worried that she would stay in the capital and apply to attack Li Chuhai again. Xia Jinyuan reminded her again and again. When he left, he adjusted Yi Qian's collar and kissed her cheek reluctantly. The taxi driver, who had been waiting for them, stuck his head out of the window and joked, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Let's make out when you come back." The shy Yi Qian shrank into Xia Jinyuan's arms and could not raise her head. The thick-skinned Xia Jinyuan smiled calmly at the taxi driver's teasing. "When you come back, we really have to make out with each other to relieve the pain of lovesickness." Yi Jian pinched her waist with neither too much nor too little force. He smiled mischievously and said, "Hitting is a sign of affection. Scolding is a sign of love. Do you want to scold me a few more times?" Yi Qian was even more ruthless. She pulled his clothes out with both hands and slipped her soft little hands under his clothes. She used her slightly cold fingers to pinch his waist. This was probably the first time that Yi Qian took the initiative to touch Xia Jinyuan's skin. She did not pinch him, but just being close to him made Xia Jinyuan's heart tremble. Then she pinched him a few times, neither too hard nor too light, and it tickled him so much that he chuckled. Yi Qian, who was still in his arms, could hear his chest tremble. She couldn't help but purse her lips and smile. She remembered what the elders in the village had said. They said that men who were sensitive to tickles were passionate and afraid of their wives. She didn't know if it was true or not, but Captain Xia was sensitive to tickles. Without wasting any more time, Yi Qian asked Xia Jinyuan to get into the car and leave before turning to go home. She had a pass to Danguei Garden. After showing it to the guard, she declined the guard's offer to drive her up. She slowly walked along the road leading to her home, watching the street lights illuminate the icicles hanging from the trees. Occasionally, a bright light flashed. It was as if she had walked into a fairy tale world. It was very quiet all around. Yi Jian stepped on the light that shone on the ground. She enjoyed the snowy scenery at night with a rare peace of mind. She held her phone in her hand and texted Xia Jinyuan back and forth. It took her almost half an hour to reach home. Uncle Fu pressed the doorbell and opened the door after a while. Then, he saw Yi Jian standing at the door with a cold aura around her. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. "Uncle Fu, I'm back." Yi Qian smiled and greeted him. She even waved her hand mischievously in front of Uncle Fu's eyes. "You didn't see wrongly. I went out for a walk and then came home." Uncle Fu was overjoyed. "Io." He immediately turned sideways and said, come in, come in. Why didn't I hear the sound of a car? You're so cold." "Oh, you didn't walk all the way up from the foot of the mountain, did you?" "That would take about half an hour to walk." The old man who was chatting with an old friend raised his voice and asked, "Xiao Fu, who's here? Come in. It's cold outside. Don't catch a cold." Chapter 3478. Old Master Fu raised his voice, and all the guests in the living room turned to look in the direction of the door. "Jane Eyre is back." She even walked back alone. Io, she's so cold. Uncle Fu was so happy that his heart ached as he replied to Old Master Fu. Her little face is red from the cold, but she didn't ask the guards to send her up. Yi Qian had already entered the house. His clear voice was full of smiles as he said, "Grandfather, it's me who's back." She saw one, no, two familiar faces sitting in the living room. Her grandfather was being carefully supported by another familiar face as he hurriedly got up. The result of going home without even a snore was that she had to face the situation in front of her. Qin Xiu, who was helping Old Master Fu up, heard the two words, Jane Eyre, and his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Jane Eyre, Jane Eyre. He had also met a Jane Eyre yesterday, but he didn't expect to meet another Jane Eyre here at Old Master Fu's place. Qin Xiu, who had a faint bitterness in his mouth, saw Old Master Fu getting up in a hurry. Knowing Old Master Fu's health, he hurriedly helped him up. Then, he saw Jane Eyre appear in front of him. It was the same person as Jane Eyre. This was really an unexpected surprise. Qin Xiu stared unblinkingly at Yi Qian, who had suddenly appeared in front of him again. A light flashed across his elegant eyes, and a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. Really, what a coincidence. It was so coincidental that his heart couldn't help but skip a few beats. At this moment, his chest was filled with joy. The person chatting with Old Master Fu was none other than Old Master Qin, who also lived in Dangui Garden. When he saw Yi Qian, he immediately recognized him. Seeing his old friend so happy, Old Master Qin couldn't figure out what was going on. Grandfather? Old Family Xia's granddaughter-in-law. Why was she at Old Master Fu's house? She even called Old Master Fu grandfather. What was going on? Uncle Fu led Yi Qian into the house and was stunned. Oh no, he was so happy that he forgot that there was a guest in the house. What should he do now? How was he going to explain this to Old Master Qin? Old Master Fu was much calmer. He gestured for Yi Qian to come over. Come. Girl, come and meet Grandpa Qin. Grandpa Qin is Grandpa's old friend for decades. The old man trusted his old friend's character. Since he had bumped into him, he would just admit it openly. It wasn't like his granddaughter couldn't be seen in public. Yi Qian hurriedly walked over to support the old man's right hand. He first whispered a thank you to Qin Xiu, then greeted Old Master Qin obediently. Hello, Grandpa Qin. I met you at Grandpa Xia's house the day before yesterday. Do you remember? How could he not have an impression of her? Just now, he was talking to Old Fu about the granddaughter-in-law of the old family Xia. She chuckled and said, I remember you. Just now, I was talking to your grandpa about you. I even felt that your grandpa Xia is blessed to have such a good granddaughter-in-law. Old Master Qin still didn't understand why his granddaughter-in-law of the old family Xia would call his old friend grandfather when she came to the Fu family. Ha! When your grandpa Qin was talking about how good his granddaughter-in-law of the family Xia was, I really had a lot to say, but couldn't say it. It's good now, I can finally say it. Old Master Fu happily held Yi Qian's hand. When he sat down, he laughed again. He pulled Qin Xiu's hand and said to Yi Qian, I almost forgot. I haven't introduced this young man to you yet. Chapter 3479. Qin Xiu helped Old Master Fu sit down and smiled. Grandpa Fu, you don't have to introduce me. Yi Qian and I have known each other for years. She is still studying in Nan Province High School. When I went to Nan Province High School to look for my uncle, it was Yi Qian who showed me the way. As you know, I can't recognize my way around and have a terrible sense of direction. I only got better in the past 2 years after receiving treatment. Old Master Fu couldn't help but laugh. What a coincidence. The two of you have known each other for so many years. Ha! Old Qin, come take a look at my granddaughter. She is as good as your granddaughter. Just like a child, he couldn't help but show off his favorite things. Granddaughter. Old Master Qin thought about it in his heart and said, I have been envious of old Xia for a long time. Now, I'm envious of you too. Old Fu, you have to tell me everything. I really don't know what to say now. They have been friends for so many years. If there was anything he wanted to ask, there was no need to beat around the bush. It is a long story. You will have to listen for a while. Old Master Fu laughed and then sighed. Just then, Uncle Fu came over to ask if Yi Qian had eaten. Yi Qian shook her head. Before she could say anything, Old Master Fu patted the back of her hand and said with a smile, "Hurry up and eat. Grandpa Fu will talk to your Grandpa Qin." He then turned to Qin Xiu and said, "Since the two of you know each other, go to the restaurant and talk. You don't have to accompany us." Qin Xiu glanced at the restaurant not far away and stood up with a smile. "Tonight, I have to freeload at Grandpa Fu's place again. I haven't eaten Uncle Fu's food in a long time, and I miss it." Old Master Qin could not help but laugh. "You haven't eaten your fill at home, and yet you're here begging for food at Grandpa Fu's house. You're already an adult. Why are you still acting like a teenager? You keep thinking about your Uncle Fu's cooking." It was obvious that the two families had a good relationship. "You don't say." At that time, Little Xiu even remembered my family's mealtime and came over several times during mealtime. I didn't notice it the first time or the second time, but one day, I unintentionally asked him, "You're so lucky to be here for a meal." In the end, he honestly told me that he remembered the mealtime and specially rushed over it this time. At that time, I laughed until I choked on my food. Yi Qian had just returned home, so he did not know that the two families were close. Now that he saw the old teacher teasing Qin Xiu, he could not help but cast a sideways glance at him. But his gaze was gentle, and his expression was clear and bright, without the slightest trace of embarrassment at being teased. He also pursed his lips and laughed. It turned out that the young and promising diplomat had such a private side. Qin Xiu noticed that someone was sizing him up, but he didn't go over. Instead, he allowed Yi Qian to look over. Although it was a pleasant surprise, he did not forget that the girl he liked already had a boyfriend. He had to abide by the rules and not bring trouble and embarrassment to her. Yi Qian, who was still a little awkward, also relaxed. He smiled at Qin Xiu and said, "Let's go and eat together. I'm so hungry that I've been singing the empty fort strategy for a long time." Qin Xiu nodded. He did not even need to lead the way. He walked to the dining room on his own. At the same time, he also knew where the bowls and chopsticks were placed, as well as where the dishes were placed. He was even more familiar with the kitchen than Yi Qian. Yi Qian was dumbfounded as he watched him set the bowls and chopsticks, then scoop the rice and bring out the dishes. Now, she really believed what her grandfather said. A diplomat really did come over during mealtime to eat. He was so familiar with the kitchen that it was like his own home. Chapter 3480. With the heater on, Qin Xiu took off his suit and wore only a white shirt. His sleeves were slightly tied up and his wrists were slightly exposed. The hem of his shirt was tightened with a black leather belt, which accentuated his slim waist. As he set the table, his waist tightened and his waistline became even sexier. After his slender hands placed all the dishes on the table, he habitually took out a tissue to wipe his hands. After he was done, he looked up and saw Yi Qian, who was still standing at the dining table, staring at him in shock. Qin Xiu could not help but laugh. It seemed that she was frightened by his familiarity with the house. When I was studying, I came here on time every Friday and Saturday. It was the same during the summer vacation. I would come to Grandpa Fu's house at least 3 times a week. I could find everything in the kitchen with my eyes closed. I even secretly drank the medicinal wine that Uncle Fu made. Uncle Fu, who had brought over a plate of pickled vegetables, heard this and joked. There was a snake in the medicinal wine. He didn't notice it when he was stealing the wine, so when he poured the wine, the snake came out with it. He was so scared that he spilled all the snake wine I made. Look at him now. Every time I see him on TV, I can't help but laugh. Seeing that all the dishes he had reheated were on the table, Uncle Fu, who was not surprised, said, "As usual, wash the dishes after you finish eating." "Okay, thank you, Uncle Fu." Qin Xiu sat down and picked up the bowl and chopsticks. He was really not polite at all, let alone treating him as an outsider. After hearing about Qin Xiu's embarrassing incident, Yi Qian suppressed the smile on her face. If she smiled too obviously, Qin Xiu, who was sitting opposite her, would see that she was laughing at him. It was really funny. Yi Qian sat down and ate a mouthful of rice. Then she picked up some vegetables and ate slowly. However, a question slowly surfaced in her mind. After Uncle Fu walked out of the dining room, she asked Qin Xiu, "Since you come to my house so often, why is your relationship with my brother so normal?" "Brother?" Li Jinyan? Qin Xiu, who was elegant and gave people an illusion of art, held the bowl with one hand and pondered for a while before saying, "Our relationship is indeed ordinary. I came back to China in the second year of high school. You also know that my sense of direction is not very good. Under normal circumstances, I won't come to Dangui Garden. When I was in my third year of high school, my father was deployed. Sometimes my mother was too busy, so she would ask her personal assistant to send me to Dangui Garden. At that time, Jinyan was in a completely closed management school and rarely came back during the summer vacation. Although I often went to your house to freeload, I rarely met Jinyan. There's one more thing. Although my grandfather and Grandpa Fu knew each other back then, their relationship, don't look at how close they are now. I heard from my father that they were just acquaintances in the past. It just so happened that they got along well. It was only after they retired and moved into Dangui Garden that they started to interact frequently. Moreover, Jinyan's personality has been cold since he was young. As for me, although I can talk in meetings, I've never taken the initiative in life, especially when it comes to making friends. The two of us don't like to talk much. Even if we met early on, our relationship was ordinary. Yi Qian, who had eaten a mouthful of vegetables, couldn't help but nod. That explained it all. Her brother's personality was indeed cold. As for Qin Xiu, when they first met, he felt a sense of distance from him. The two of them didn't like to talk much and didn't meet often. No matter how long they knew each other, their relationship was naturally ordinary. When Qin Xiu was talking to Yi Qian, he was paying attention to the movements outside the living room. When he saw that Yi Qian had no intention of mentioning why she was old Master Fu's granddaughter, he maintained his gentlemanly demeanor and chose to pay attention to the movements in the living room instead of asking Yi Qian directly. Chapter 3481. The old man picked out some important points and told old Master Qin one by one. For example, he didn't mention son Xueqing's death. He only said that the two of them had missed each other by accident. He also said that his grandson, Li Jinyan, had accidentally met his granddaughter and realized that she looked like his aunt. So, he had asked around and was overjoyed to find his sister. Fate makes fools of us. Yuxing and I never thought that Jane Eyre's mother would die young, nor did we know that there was a descendant of the Fu family outside. Sigh, now that I think about the suffering that Jane Eyre suffered all those years, my heart aches. The old man's eyes reddened when he talked about the hardships that his granddaughter had suffered. His vigorous voice unknowingly became deeper and filled with guilt. Although he only picked out some important points, old Master Qin could hear him take a deep breath. This was really all the coincidences that led to today's good news. For a moment, he was filled with emotions. I really didn't expect that there would be so many twists and turns. Don't just think about the child's past. Think about the future. Also, it's a good thing that she came home. Otherwise, you would have suffered a great loss. That's true. But old Qin, you have to help me keep this a secret. I want to find the best time to announce it, so I mention it to old friends. Then you don't have to worry. No wonder you were so happy when I saw you last year. You even said that there was great news. It turns out that your granddaughter is back. You're so happy that even your steps are lighter. Congratulations, the family is finally reunited. Old Master Qin nodded. This was not a small matter, so naturally, he had to treat it with caution. Qin Xiu heard every word that was said in the dining room. He looked at Yi Qian, who was about to get up to clear the table. He pursed his lips slightly and got up with him. Let me do it. You go and accompany the old man. He hadn't done any research on her and only knew a little about her from his uncle. He knew that she had lived a difficult life when she was young, but he didn't expect her life to be so difficult. Fortunately, she had returned to the Fu family and reunited with her family. It was all thanks to Xia Jinyuan's help. Otherwise, even if she could return to the Fu family, it would have been difficult. Thinking of what Xia Jinyuan had done for Yi Qian, Qin Xiu could only admire him. Yi Qian knew that he had heard everything. Seeing that he was still as graceful as before and did not ask about anything, the corners of his mouth curved slightly. It's nothing. It's all in the past. Hearing this, Qin Xiu looked up at Yi Qian, who was smiling like the rising sun, and tightened his grip on the bowl and chopsticks. Even after experiencing so many hardships, the smile on her face was still so bright. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, and her eyes were like clear lakes. The hardships of life didn't bring her a trace of gloominess, only a cheerful sunshine. The girl he liked was so strong that it was admirable. Qin Xiu could tell from her expression that she didn't need anyone's sympathy or comfort. His thin lips curled up, and a smile slowly spread across his handsome face. It's all in the past. Go over quickly. I'll wash the dishes. Since you've gotten a free meal, you have to perform well so that you won't feel guilty the next time you come over. His nonchalance made Yi Qian feel relieved. He put down the bowl and chopsticks in his hand and hesitated for a few seconds before he smiled and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony. Thank you for your hard work." Perhaps because she had been confessed to before, Yi Qian subconsciously kept a certain distance and was polite to Qin Xiu. She didn't realize that Qin Xiu's eyes had darkened. After Yi Qian walked out of the dining room, he stood in front of the sink with his sleeves rolled up to wash the dishes. He sighed softly. He had been too impulsive when he confessed to her. Chapter 3482. They had agreed to be friends, but in reality, as the water flowed, Qin Xiu's bitter smile disappeared along with the sound of running water. He was still washing the dishes when old Master Qin saw Yi Qian walk out. He turned his head to look in the direction of the dining room and thought of the two young people who had helped their old friend sit down. He felt a sense of pity. His grandson was not bad. He had a good character, good looks, and a good family background. The rarest thing was that he did not have any bad habits. He even controlled himself when he smoked. He had also known old Fu's granddaughter for many years. Why didn't they become friends? Instead, old Fu's family, Xia, beat him to it. At this moment, old Master Qin felt a pain in his heart. Old Xia and his wife were really so lucky that they could not be compared to them. Even his favorite granddaughter-in-law had been snatched away by his grandson. Ioyo, his old problem of angina, was about to act up. Old Master Qin, whose heart was in pain, could not hold it in. After Qin Xiu finished washing the dishes and came out to sit beside him, he said to old Master Qin, "I really feel that it's a pity. Your granddaughter and my grandson, look, how compatible they are. But why don't I have old Xia's good fortune?" As he spoke, he suddenly raised his hand and slapped Qin Xiu hard on the back. Qin Xiu was wearing a shirt, so when old Master Qin slapped him, the sound was crisp and clear. Caught off guard, Qin Xiu choked and coughed. Yi Jian, who was originally a little embarrassed because of old Master Qin's words, saw that Qin Xiu's white jade-like face was flushed red from choking. He was even more embarrassed than her. Yi Jian's awkwardness disappeared, and she laughed unkindly. Qin Xiu was embarrassed. His grandfather really touched on his sore spot. He felt as if his back had been hit by a brick. His back hurt, and he coughed until tears flowed out. Old Master Qin did not show any mercy. After the slap, Qin Xiu was still coughing softly while covering his fist. He said resentfully, "Why were you so slow? Don't you know how to act fast? Don't you know how to strike first to gain initiative? Don't you know survival of the fittest?" Old Master Fu was laughing so hard that his head was tilted back. All right. That slap was so hard that it could have fractured his bones. Do you think two people can be friends just because they want to? That requires a foundation of feelings. The foundation of a relationship is built on the foundation of having good feelings for each other. Look at the two of them. Since they have known each other for so many years, they haven't been together. It's obvious that your grandson doesn't like my granddaughter, and my granddaughter doesn't like your grandson. They don't even like each other. Aren't you forcing them to be friends? You can't force a melon to be sweet. Don't act recklessly. It would have been fine if he hadn't said anything. Once he said it, old Master Qin blew his beard and glared. You haven't taken a liking to her yet. Tell me, What kind of person do you want to find? Find a celestial immortal. Qin Xiu, who was slapped so hard that he coughed up tears, could only feel helpless. He had taken a fancy to Grandpa Fu's granddaughter, but Grandpa Fu's granddaughter did not take a fancy to him. Moreover, he had confessed his love to her, but he had failed. Grandpa, Yi Qian and I are really just friends. Just like Grandpa Fu said, if we really had feelings for each other, we would have been together long ago. Please calm down. He tried to persuade him gently, so that the two elders would not notice anything amiss. He even whispered, "Please save me some face. I'm feeling a little restless now." Then he would save his grandson some face. The slap just now seemed to have been a little too hard. His palm was still numb and hot. Chapter 3483. After that, old Master Qin asked Yi Qian many more questions. He was even more affectionate and benevolent than he had been during family Xia. The more he talked with Yi Qian, the more old Master Qin liked Yi Qian, who had her own opinions and relied on her own abilities to climb up the social ladder. On the way back to the Qin residence, old Master Qin lamented, "I can't believe she was snatched away by old family Xia. What a good granddaughter-in-law. Sai, your Grandpa Fu and I have been good friends for many years. Why didn't I help you out in this matter? If I had known there was such a good girl, I would have given up my pride to marry the two of you. Hey, I can't think about it anymore. I can't think about it anymore. If I think about it again, I'll have angina again." The Fu residence was not far from the Qin residence. After passing through a small path, they would be there in about 5 minutes. Qin Xiu was afraid of slipping on the ground, so he held onto old Master Qin tightly. When he heard the topic that made him uncomfortable, Qin Xiu smiled and sighed. If it weren't for Grandpa Xia's grandson, Xia Jinyuan, who helped, Grandpa Fu might not have been able to find his granddaughter. This is fate between the two of them. It's not something you can snatch away just because you want to. Xia Jinyuan had helped Yi Qian a lot along the way. As a man, Qin Xiu asked himself honestly, he might not have been able to do what Xia Jinyuan had done. Therefore, he really couldn't snatch away just because he wanted to. He had pursued Yi Jian with all his heart and sincerity. This made him, a secret admirer who had confessed to Yi Jian before, feel deeply guilty for confessing to Yi Jian in the past. Although he didn't regret confessing, if he had the chance to do it all over again, he would definitely be more careful. Or rather, he would just watch silently and not take a step forward. Besides, Yi Qian and I really don't have that kind of feeling. If we did, with Uncle around, wouldn't I have enjoyed the benefits of being in a favorable position? So, you can't mention that Yi Qian is Grandpa Xia's granddaughter-in-law. If you mention it too much, it will make her feel awkward. Old Master Qin walked slowly step by step. When he heard his grandson's reminder, he glared at him. "Do you think Grandpa is such an ignorant person? Do I need you to remind me? Also, do you really have no feelings for Unyielding? Why do I feel like you can't let go of yourself in front of her?" The old man had seen countless people, so he still had this intuition. Qin Xiu nodded and answered calmly, "Look, you're thinking too much again. It's not that I can't do anything about it, but I know her, but she didn't tell me about it. She's a little uncomfortable, so why should I talk to her and make things awkward for each other?" That was also true. They were all acquaintances, and suddenly bumping into a private matter that another acquaintance wanted to hide was indeed a little uncomfortable for both parties. Old Master Qin, who had been successfully deceived, still didn't know that his grandson had confessed to a girl he was very satisfied with. Seeing that they were about to reach the door, old Master Qin suddenly remembered why Qin Xiu had come today. His face turned cold. "If you can find a girlfriend like Unyielding, Grandpa will stand by your side no matter which corner of the mountain she lives in. Every day, you talk about having a good family background and a good character. Today you're hugging sesame, tomorrow you're hugging a watermelon, and the day after tomorrow you're still thinking about sesame. Picking a wife over and over again, you're really, after all, she was his daughter-in-law, so old Master Qin couldn't be too blunt. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and changed his words. You should make your own decisions. Don't listen to the adults for everything. Grandpa believes in your judgment. I really want to snatch Unyielding back for you now, but after thinking about it, you probably won't be able to. Forget it. Chapter 3484. Xiao's expression froze when he heard his grandfather's words. Behind him, he couldn't help but laugh. Snatch? How could he snatch? If he couldn't, he couldn't. Don't worry, I'll definitely find you a good granddaughter-in-law, but not now. You'll have to wait a little longer. Xiao's elegant and gentle voice gradually disappeared in the wind, leaving only a corner of the courtyard lit up by the street lamp. In the future, please take care of Miss Jian. This child, sigh, she suffered a lot. When old Fu said that, my heart ached. Yes, I know. Be careful of the steps. It's frozen. Come out for a walk with Grandma tomorrow morning after we've shoveled it. One old man and one young man, one on the left and one on the right. One walked slowly, the other carefully supported the other. They stepped on the squeaking snow and returned to their own home. It was late at night and the wind was cold. The warm lights of the Fu family in Dangue Garden shone on the window. The laughter had not dissipated, and the grandfather and grandson were still chatting in low voices. They talked about their family matters, about the things around them, and about other people. Family members got along so warmly and casually. Old Master Fu talked about many things that happened when he was young, as well as some jokes from the Academy of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Yi Qian laughed until his eyes curved into crescents, his dark eyes shining like bright stars. Old Master Fu only went back to his room to rest at 10 at night. Another day was about to pass. When one was old, every day counted. Being able to laugh and chat with one's children and grandchildren counted as one of the blessings of old age. After Yi Qian sent Old Master Fu back to his room to rest, he also went back to his room upstairs. When he reached the door, his footsteps paused. Then he took a step forward and walked to the room Xia Jinyuan slept in that night. This room was originally the living room, but Xia Jinyuan changed it into his room after he came. Yi Qian raised his hand and gently turned the lock. There was a click from the lock, and the door was gently pushed open. After closing the door and turning on the lights, Yi Qian walked into the room with light footsteps, as if there was a very tired man sleeping on the bed in the room. She didn't dare to disturb him by making too much noise. There was nothing in the room. The only thing that could be seen was the short shorts that he had worn to sleep at night. Yi Qian walked over to the clothes rack and took down the clothes that Xia Jinyuan had worn. Then, she buried her face deep into the clothes. The refreshing scent that belonged only to her lover instantly enveloped her. At that moment, Yan Rong, who was hidden in the clothes, smiled shyly and happily. Instead of leaving, Yi Qian simply covered his face with his clothes and lay down on the bed that Xia Jinyuan had slept in. He even covered himself with the quilt. After a while, he started rolling around on the bed like a caterpillar. From time to time, he would let out a low chuckle. She was a little embarrassed by her sneaky behavior and also a little shy. She rolled around a few times until her little face was covered in sweat. Yi Qian, who was lying flat again to catch her breath, rested her head on Xia Jinyuan's clothes. She closed her eyes and couldn't help but smile. Even though he wasn't by her side, she could still feel his unique, refreshing scent. It was as if he was right beside her and hugging her tightly. It felt wonderful. Just as Yi Qian was about to return to his room to catch his breath, the phone in his clothes suddenly rang. The next second, Yi Qian got up from the bed. He was so agile that he got up in a second and stood beside the bed. The skills of a Special Forces soldier were awesome. He took the phone out of his pocket. When he saw the caller ID on the screen, Yi Qian felt his face turn red. Chapter 3485. She was secretly hugging his clothes when the owner of the clothes called. She instantly felt guilty, as if she had been caught red-handed. Even though the person was not in front of her, Yi Qian still felt guilty. She tidied her hair and adjusted her breathing before answering the call. A deep and pleasant male voice came from the phone. "Are you still awake? I hope I didn't disturb you." No, where are you now?" Yi Qian replied softly, her face burning red. She probably got up in a hurry as she was still panting. Xia Jinyuan sensed that something was wrong. He frowned and asked her, "What's wrong? Are you outside?" Yi Qian, who was still adjusting her breathing after answering the call, seemed to have noticed something. She couldn't help but sweat shyly on her forehead. She raised her hand to wipe her forehead, but she realized that she was still holding on to his clothes. Yi Qian panicked and quickly threw the clothes away. Her hands were hot and sweaty. She was panicking, so her breathing was naturally erratic. Xia Jinyuan had been paying attention to her movements, so he could naturally tell that she was panicking. Xia Jinyuan, who was about to check the equipment, suddenly felt his heart tighten. "Are you outside? Or did you return to the military?" Yi Jian knew that her panic had been detected by him. She bit her lower lip and said softly with a red face, "At home. In the room you slept in the night before. I'm helping you to adjust your clothes." Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was checking the equipment, was stunned. He thought to himself, then why is she so panicked? In less than 3 seconds, he realized why his girlfriend was panicking. A smile spread across his face. "You miss me, didn't you? When you see something, you think of me. Don't you have my picture? If you miss me, you could take it out and take a look." She was already panicking when she was tidying his clothes. Could it be that she was sleeping under his clothes and was frightened by his call? With his little fox's thin-skinned face, it was really possible for her to do so. Lieutenant Colonel Xia was indeed Lieutenant Colonel Xia. He was able to quickly find evidence that was beneficial to him from the scattered clues. Moreover, he was secretly delighted. No, he was so delighted that he was chuckling softly. Han Zheng, who was sorting out the guns, glanced at him and pursed his lips in disdain. He muttered sourly, "F***CK. Why haven't you come over to collect your phone yet? I can't listen to this anymore. I can't listen to this anymore." Were they bullying him for being single and not having a girlfriend? In his joy, Lieutenant Colonel Xia didn't overlook the situation around him. Han Zheng's jealous mutterings were met with a cold glare. Poor him. Before he joined the army, he could have a girlfriend in pairs. Now that he didn't even have a girlfriend by his side, Han Zheng felt a chill at the back of his head and chose to keep quiet. Also, shouldn't it be the guy who made the call who turned his back? Why should he turn his back? So angry, so wronged. Lieutenant Colonel Xia signaled Han Zheng to turn around and stop eavesdropping on the conversation. His voice was gentle and pleasant, like a note flowing in the night with its own warm light. "Help me keep the clothes well. I'll wear them when I come back." Yi Jian, who picked up the clothes again and pretended to tidy them up, did not know that her smart boyfriend had already guessed what she had done just now. When she heard him, she answered seriously, "Okay, I'll wash them for you tomorrow and put them in the cupboard." Her seriousness made Xia Jinyuan stifle his laughter. He replied seriously, "No need. I only wore them for one night. The next day, I thought that I had to go back to the Fu family at night, so I didn't bring them. You could just fold them properly." Chapter 3486. Yi Qian, who was caressing the soft fabric, responded with an "oh." Like a little fox who had stolen a treasure, she smiled slyly. Fortunately, she was quick-witted and said that she was helping him tidy up his clothes. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to explain why she was so flustered in the middle of the night. No matter how cunning a fox was, it couldn't beat a smart hunter. She was still feeling smug, but the smart hunter was even happier. After washing his clothes, it would smell like soap. How could it compare to the original? So it couldn't be washed. It would be best if he folded it and left it by her pillow. Every night, when she saw his clothes, she couldn't help but think of him. The call only lasted for 5 minutes, so it was almost time to talk. Xia Jinyuan, who was ready to set off, fastened his helmet with one hand and seized the time to talk to Yi Qian. "I have 45 minutes before I set off. After 5 minutes, I'll turn on my phone. I'll only be able to contact you when I come back. If you need anything, look for your brothers at home. They're still on leave. If they're not called back to the unit urgently, they can rest until the 16th of January before they return to the unit. I gave them your phone number just now. They should be texting you later. Maybe they can only send it when they see it tomorrow. Save their numbers well. If there's anything urgent, Just look for them directly. Yi Qian, who had gradually calmed down, cleared his throat and said, "Okay, I got it. Go do what you need to do. Don't worry about me. If there's anything, I'll definitely look for my brothers. Don't get distracted. They've already gathered, right? Take care of yourself when you're outside. I'll wait for you to come back. Be good and wait for me to come back. Also, don't think too much. If there's any news from the higher-ups, they'll inform you immediately. If you have time, come visit the old house. Grandpa and Grandma want you to come over. I'll hang up first. I'll contact you when I come back." Xia Jinyuan had to turn his phone. After he finished speaking, he immediately hung up. Yi Qian only had time to reply with a one-syllable "okay" before he heard the busy tone. Yi Qian held his phone and quietly looked at the dark screen. He slowly sat back down on the bed and started laughing softly for some reason. In the end, he threw himself onto the bed and buried his face in his clothes again. He didn't know what he was thinking, but he was laughing so hard that his shoulders were trembling. After laughing, she lays around in bed for a while, then got up to tidy up her messy short hair, tugged at her clothes, and ran back to her room with Xia Jinyuan's clothes in her arms. The night was quiet, and one could almost hear the sound of snowflakes falling. The warm lights that illuminated the windows were extinguished. Some people had fallen asleep, while others carried their rifles and started a new journey. Xia Jinyuan, who was ready to go, sealed his phone and took out the jade pendant that he hadn't had time to return to Father Fu, handed it to Major General Yang, and set off. The plane took off, and Xia Jinyuan and his comrades took the plane to a foreign country through the wind and snow. They would either return in blood or die on the battlefield. There was no time for them to return, so they could only wait. The wind in the mountains seemed to always be a bit colder than the wind in the city. When it blew, it was like a knife brushing against one's cheeks. It was bone-chilling. A few people sat in an abandoned cave deep in the mountains during the anti-Japanese war. They made a fire to keep warm. The fire burned brightly, illuminating every person holding a gun to keep warm. Although these people had Asian faces, their facial features were obviously not Chinese. They were foreigners, and even the language they spoke was not Chinese, but a foreign language. The leader of the group, a man with a long scar near his brow bone, raised his hand to look at his watch from time to time. As it got later, the seriousness on his face deepened. Chapter 3487. Someone muttered something under his breath. The man shook his head and spat out some cold words from his purplish-black mouth. What he meant was, "There's no news yet. Let's wait and see." His words made the other man with malicious eyes impatient. He kicked a piece of firewood close to him, causing sparks to fly as he growled in a low voice. It was obvious that his mood was quite unstable. How could they be stable? They were blocked in the mountains, and it was difficult to even get out. They even said that they would definitely be able to get out of here. What the hell? The airport, the train station, the highway, all the exits were blocked. Where could they escape to? There was still no news, and it was difficult to even get out of the mountains. Where could they escape to? Negative emotions could easily affect others. The other three men couldn't help but tighten their faces. They were sent away, and none of their boss's subordinates were around. It wasn't that they were afraid of death, but they didn't want to be treated like trash. For a moment, the 5 foreign men couldn't help but fall silent. In the end, the man with the scar on his brow lowered his voice and said something. Only then did the 4 men's expressions relax. When it was 1 a.m. and the 5 men were about to fall asleep, they received a message. Although it was short, it made everyone feel refreshed. After reading the message, the 5 of them relaxed. The man in the lead was wearing a coat, and his figure was similar to Li Chuhai. He looked at the message, and a smile appeared on his face. He nodded as he smiled, which attracted the envious gazes of the other 3 men. The message was sent by Li Chuhai, but it wasn't from him. It was from the senior assistant with the surname Zhu, who used to follow Mrs. Li. He was the one who sent the message to those who couldn't get out for the time being. The abandoned cave that they were hiding in was provided by him. After the message was sent, the assistant respectfully walked to Li Chuhai and whispered, "Boss, I've already informed them. You can leave immediately after they attract their attention." Li Chuhai, who was sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed on the coffee table, chuckled, "Don't be in a hurry to leave. Let them look for it first. We'll play with them when we get back. Let the people at the port do what they need to do. There's no need to wait for me to avoid attracting attention." "Yes." The assistant nodded. Then he took out his personal phone and showed a few messages to Li Chuhai. "Mrs. Li asked me several messages in a row, asking if all the company's liquid assets have been frozen. She also asked me about her money. Mrs. Li should be saying that she wants to transfer all the money to her account and doesn't want to put it in your hands. It wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't that he couldn't take it out. It's just, it was inconvenient." Li Chuhai, who was resting with his eyes closed, did not even open them. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a hint of hostility. "She's not asking for money. She's testing the waters. You've been by her side for so many years. If I leave and you continue to stay, with my sister's intelligence, she'll definitely be able to guess a thing or two about our relationship. Take a look at when she sent the message." It was raining heavily outside, but Li Chuhai didn't move at all. Just this calmness alone was enough to make people raise their eyebrows. Chapter 3488. Assistant Zhu looked at the time of the two messages. One was sent at around 11 o'clock in the morning, and the other was sent at around 8 o'clock in the evening. He had been busy, so he didn't pay much attention to them. "She didn't send you a message until 11 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, she didn't have the phone with her before, and the signal at home was blocked. The first message only asked if the company's assets were frozen. It was probably the first message my brother-in-law sent me after he came back. This message told me that the Du family had been controlled until 11 o'clock. The second message was sent until 8 o'clock in the evening. Based on your understanding of her, do you think she could have held it in for nearly 10 hours? Li Chuhai's feet trembled as he asked Assistant Zhu casually. Assistant Zhu, who had always worked for Li Chuhai, pondered for a moment before answering. Based on my understanding of Mrs. Li, the better the relationship, the less likely she would hold it in. Because she knows everything about you, she can control it. Therefore, the less likely she would hold it in. Mrs. Li has always been steady if she doesn't know everything about you. That's right. But she held it in from 11 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening. Based on your relationship with her, how could she hold it in for so long? My dear elder sister, you're amazing. During this period, she must have gone outside to check out the situation. After knowing the seriousness of the matter, she was afraid that she would be implicated, so she decided to test the waters. She wanted to find out about me through you. If you don't reply, she will be more certain that you are my man. Once you go back, she will be able to find out where I am based on your movements. She sure knows how to do things. Even I have to be careful." Assistant Zhu heard this and bowed a little. He smiled and replied, "Mrs. Li has always been good at taking over the company, and she trusts me. But this time, she still underestimated you. Even if I reply, she may not be able to find out where you are now." No. You are wrong. She can cooperate with the military. Don't underestimate the power of this country. Since they can suddenly launch an attack without me knowing, it can be seen that they have been targeting me for a long time. But what? Assistant Zhu raised his eyes slightly and waited for his boss to continue. After pausing for a while, Li Chuhai opened his eyes with a deep and confident smile. But they didn't expect that although I went back to the country, the rest of my people were still outside. The only loophole was that military school student. I didn't expect that she would be taught by the Sniper's King. She is even better than her mother's. Assistant Zhu didn't know anything about these things, and Li Chuhai wouldn't mention it to him either. According to the original plan, during the spring festival, Sun Ying would take the jade pendant to Fu Yuxing and ask him if he still remembered Sun Xueqing. Unexpectedly, before the plan could be carried out, he learned that the world-class Sniper's King in the late 1970s and early 1980s was hiding in a small mountain village and had become Yi Qian's relative. His good plan was all messed up, so he had to make a last-minute adjustment. He He had to go all the way and let Sun Ying, who knew a little about their situation, die on her own. Chapter 3489. Li Chuhai put down his legs on the tea table and said with a gloomy look, "After I go out, you must find Shin Dongfeng and lure him out. This person has always been wanted to get rid of. Once we get rid of him, it will be much easier for us to do many things. Don't worry, after I send you off, I will take care of this matter. With Yi Qian around, there's no need to worry that we won't be able to lure out the person they want. Very good. I will take good care of your wife and daughter so that you will have no worries. Take care of your domestic affairs and transfer out all the information and important materials you have collected. When the news dies down, you can come out and reunite with your wife and daughter." Assistant Zhu bowed. "I'm sorry to trouble you. It should have started in the mountains. You should go now to avoid any more trouble. When you're abroad, ask my daughter to give me a call to let me know that you've arrived safely." He was extremely loyal and wouldn't hesitate even if he had to sacrifice his life. The floor lamp in the room went out, and the sound of footsteps came from the darkness. Hearing the sound of the door opening and closing, everything returned to normal, as if no one had been there. Even the air was filled with a moldy smell. 4 o'clock in the morning was the time to sleep. The whole city was quieter than ever. Old man Li, who had just returned from the military, had been sitting quietly in his study. He sat there until 6 o'clock in the morning before he slowly got up and returned to his room. In the room, Old Man Li was not asleep either. Seeing Old Man Li enter the room, she raised her red and swollen eyes. She was old, but her eyes were still watery. She wanted to ask, but didn't dare to. Old Man Li sighed. "Sleep for a while. You are old. If you don't have a good rest, you will be even older." Old Madame Xiao Li had stayed up all night and was not sleepy at all. Hearing this, she asked in a trembling voice, "Is it all right? Did he leave?" "Okay, go to sleep, go to sleep." Without saying too much, Old Man Li went to bed and closed his eyes to sleep. Old Madame Xiao Li was already crying tears of joy. "It's fine, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine." Hugging the pillow, Old Madame Xiao Li could finally close her eyes. By the time Yi Qian found out that the encirclement mission had failed, it was already 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. It was the 8th day of the Lunar New Year, and the streets were bustling with noise and excitement. Yi Qian, who had accompanied the old man to admire the plum blossoms in the park near Dengue Garden, received a call from the military headquarters. The mission failed. The man who was killed was not Li Chuhai, but a foreign man who was similar in height to Li Chuhai. At the same time, they also killed 3 criminals who were armed with guns and arrested a foreign man who was seriously injured and was undergoing emergency treatment. In other words, Li Chuhai had escaped. He was well prepared and had even prepared a substitute to confuse them. Before this substitute had not walked into the field of vision of the scout until Li Chuhai needed to escape. However, Yi Qian was not concerned about whether Li Chuhai had escaped. Instead, he was concerned about Xia Jinyuan, who was out on a mission. Almost all of them asked Commander-in-Chief Xia in a trembling voice, "What about Captain Xia? How's the situation over there? Did he go to clean up this person's back line?" Although Xia Jinyuan did not tell Yi Qian exactly what mission he was on, she felt that this mission had something to do with Li Haichu. Otherwise, he would not have said that he might have to go out before the mission was issued. Obviously, Captain Xia knew what he was going to do next. Chapter 3490. Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't know how to answer Yi Qian. It didn't matter if she knew about the mission that she was directly involved in, but for an operation that she wasn't directly involved in, even if they were in the same unit, they had to keep it a secret from each other. "You don't have to worry about him. Nothing will happen. If you're still worried, you can go to Jean City to relax. I just met with your father and heard him mention that he'll be going to Jean City for a meeting in the afternoon. Do you want to come along? It's an exchange meeting, so you can go together. We have an accompanying clerk in the military. You can also be a clerk." Yi Qian wasn't in the mood to be a clerk. She didn't even want to go to the exchange meeting. Father Fu, who hadn't left yet, reminded Commander-in-Chief Xia in a low voice, "Just order her to go. She won't dare to disobey." Military orders were like mountains, so she had to go even if she didn't want to. Father Fu also wanted to bring his daughter with him, so that he could find out if anything was wrong. Father Fu couldn't accept it when he found out that Li Chuhai was the mastermind behind his wife's death. The Fu family and the Li family were in-laws, but he didn't expect that the person who caused his wife to be separated by life and death and almost made him forget about his daughter was actually a member of the Li family. Jin Yin even had to call him uncle. He wanted to ask Li Chuhai what enmity he had with the Fu family for him to go to such lengths to harm his entire family. Now, he also wanted to find Li Chuhai as soon as possible and question him personally. However, his daughter, Yi Qian, was also worried, especially since this child knew about a long time ago. In order not to make him sad and put Jin Yin in a difficult position, she especially begged Commander-in-Chief Xia not to tell her for the time being unless it was absolutely necessary. The night before last, at the most critical moment, the military finally called and asked him to go to the military headquarters. From the night before last until today, almost 48 hours had passed. He had been monitoring the progress of the entire incident at the military headquarters. He also knew that his daughter Yi Qian had come to the military headquarters, but at the time he was with the person who had shot his wife, so he did not come to meet his daughter. Father Fu, who had not been home for almost 48 hours, heard Yi Qian's trembling voice coming from the landline. Father Fu was afraid that Yi Qian would get into an accident due to excessive worry. In the end, Yi Qian had to go to Jin City to participate in the exchange meeting with the army. He also had to go to Jin City's military port to observe the naval base. The meeting would last for 3 days, and he would only return to the capital after 3 days. Father Fu needed to come back and pack his luggage. Yi Qian accompanied the old man to admire the winter plum blossoms for a while before returning to Dangue Garden with the escort of the guards. Not long after she received the call, her expression changed slightly. When he heard her mention the military headquarters, the old man knew that something had happened to his granddaughter. It was still Yi Qian who insisted on accompanying him to admire the winter plum blossoms for a while before returning to Dangue Garden. Yi Qian did not tell the old man about his worries. On the way home, he even chatted and laughed with the old man. He did not dare let the old man see through his worries and worry about them together. Father Fu had arrived home earlier. When he saw that Yi Qian did not look too good, he sighed with heartache and joked, "How can accompanying father on a business trip make you so sad that you look like you're going to cry?" "Sigh, I was still looking forward to going on a business trip with my daughter. I didn't expect you to dislike me so much. I'm really sad." Yi Qian was sad, but the person he was most worried about was Father Fu. He could only think of another way to make Yi Qian laugh out loud. The old man also laughed and said, "You should all go and do your work. As for me, it just so happens that I can have some peace and quiet for 2 days." Chapter 3491. Everyone could see that Yi Qian was in low spirits, and the old man's heart ached for her. Sigh, being a soldier was tough, but to train a soldier's perseverance and strength of character, hardship was inevitable. Since she was a soldier, she had to endure hardships, and she had to endure hardships that ordinary people could not. The old man, who had been in uniform all his life, felt sorry for his granddaughter, but he did not console her. This was because she had to bear the pain and suffering by herself. She had to bear it by herself. Once she passed this hurdle and endured it, her bones and soul would be tempered, and she would be able to be at ease the next time she encountered it. Yi Qian, who was worried about Xia Jinyuan's safety, went on her first business trip with Father Fu in the afternoon. She stayed by Father Fu's side the whole time as a military academy student. She was not conspicuous because she was not the only military academy student in the entire exchange meeting. There were also national defense students from other schools, and in a short meeting in the afternoon, she had gotten to know 2 students from the Army Academy, chatting happily with them. However, she would occasionally take out her phone to see if there were any new messages or missed calls. She did not receive any calls until nighttime, which meant that there was still no news from Li Chuhai. However, Beijing was still heavily guarded, and every entrance was guarded by armed special forces. Yi Qian did not receive a call from Beijing, but instead received a call from the Southern Province Police. Yi Qian was having dinner with Father Fu and a few senior colonels when she received the call from the Southern Province Police. When she saw the area code, Yi Qian suddenly remembered. She had stood her good friend and Jiasen up because of Sun Ying. She thought it was Jiasen calling, so she immediately picked it up. However, what she heard was an unfamiliar man's voice and his identity. This phone call had a lot to do with Sun Dongqing. Sun Dongqing, the female prisoner who had been sent to the hospital for treatment, took advantage of the fact that the nurse was removing the needles from her and suddenly jumped up from the bed. She used a pair of chopsticks that had been sharpened to an extremely sharp point at the nurse's neck. Using the nurse as a hostage, she demanded that the police find her daughter. In order to see Sun Ying, Sun Dongqing used the stupidest but most effective method. Since it was related to the nurse's personal safety, the police immediately contacted Sun Ying. However, Sun Ying's phone was turned off, and there was no way to contact her. After waiting for 5 minutes, when she found out that her daughter could not be contacted, she lost control of her emotions and stabbed the nurse's neck with her sharp chopsticks, causing her to bleed. She knew that her daughter had gone to look for Yi Qian. Chapter 3492. As soon as she finished reading the first message, she received a second one. Yi Jian, who had been holding the phone in her hand, narrowed her eyes and immediately looked down. It wasn't a message from the military, but from her good friend Jiasen. This time, Jiasen told her that Sun Xueqing had gone crazy. When she heard the news of Sun Ying's death, she went crazy on the spot. Yi Qian couldn't help but purse her lips. She actually went crazy. In her previous life, Sun Dongqing wasn't fair, but she was very plump. She wore thick gold chains around her neck and wrists, and 6 of her 10 fingers wore gold rings. She told everyone that these rings were given to her by her daughter, Ying. At that time, no one dared to say anything about Sun Dongqing even if she walked sideways in the village. She was so strong that no one dared to gossip about her, but she actually went crazy. Yi Qian was surprised. Crazy. It was good that she went crazy. If she went crazy, she wouldn't know anything. If she went crazy, she would only live in her own world, and she wouldn't have to go back to prison. Going crazy was the end for Sun Dongqing. Yi Qian sighed softly, and a rare smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Father Fu, who had been chatting with his colleagues, noticed Yi Qian's sudden smile. Although it was faint, it made him feel relieved. Yi Qian had been in a bad mood today. Although he smiled politely throughout the conversation, as a father, he could still sense it. In fact, Li Chuhai's escape wasn't just because she was very worried about Xia Jinyuan. He and Commander-in-Chief Xia were also very worried, especially from Commander-in-Chief Xia, who happened to be in the office when he heard about Li Chuhai's escape. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was able to keep a straight face even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, suddenly had a change in expression. He gripped the phone so hard that it seemed like he could crush it. What did Li Chuhai's escape mean? It meant that many things and many people would be in danger in the future. At that time, he did not know that Family Xia and Sixth Brother were out on a mission. It was not until he called his daughter, Yi Qian, that he vaguely realized something. At that moment, his heart tightened and he was deeply worried. When he saw that Yi Qian, who had been in low spirits for the entire day, was smiling, Father Fu thought that there was good news from the military. He couldn't help but lean forward and ask, "News from the higher-ups?" Otherwise, why would there be a faint smile at the corner of his mouth? If that was the case, he could sleep peacefully tonight. Unfortunately, she wasn't. Yi Qian shook his head gently and sent a text message to Father Fu. My classmate Jiasen just texted me. Sun Dongqing is in trouble. Did something happen to Sun Dongqing? Father Fu, whose face had darkened, took the phone and glanced at it. His eyes immediately turned cold. She had actually gone mad. She had gone mad. She had gotten away with it. Father Fu did not have a good impression of Sun Dongqing. Yi Qian had been scolded and beaten by her. No matter how magnanimous Father Fu was, he would never forgive Sun Dongqing. When he was dating his wife, he did not know that his wife had a biological sister. Furthermore, his wife's identity was special. He did not even know her home address. If he had known even a little, his daughter would not have suffered so much at Sun Dongqing's hands. As a father, Father Fu felt guilty towards Yi Qian. How could he sympathize with Sun Dongqing, the abuser, just because she had gone mad? No, he would only feel that she had gotten away with it. Although Father Fu felt this way, he did not say it out loud. He did not want his hatred to affect Yi Qian. He did not want his daughter to remember these terrible people and things. Chapter 3493. Father Fu handed the phone over and sighed. She finally has a home now. From now on, you won't have any contact with them. Everything that happened in the past is in the past. I want you to be happy. I don't want you to remember everything that happened in the past. You have to let go of what you need to let go, and you have to forget what you need to forget. Jane Eyre, from now on, their family will never hurt you again. It's time for you to walk out of the shadow that they have cast on you. Father Fu didn't want Yi Qian to hold a grudge. That would only make him unhappy. He didn't think it was worth it to make Yi Qian unhappy over someone like that. Therefore, he advised Yi Qian to let go of the past and not think about it. Broad-minded parents would never teach their children to be calculative. They would only use their magnanimity to influence their children. They wouldn't be like Sun Dongqing and Madame Li, who taught their children to be calculative. Yi Qian didn't need Father Fu's advice. She felt the same way. She smiled and said, "It has nothing to do with me anymore. Don't worry. They're just some unpleasant memories. It's best to forget them." Yes, it's best to forget unpleasant memories. Your mother used to say something similar. Father Fu saw this and smiled deeply. Unpleasant memories and unpleasant people. Since it was all over, what was there to care about? Yi Jian nodded with a smile in her eyes, which made Papa Fu's smile even brighter. Sun Dongqing was devastated when she found out about Sun Ying's death. After she divorced Yi Jifan, Sun Ying was her world and her pillar of support. Before she reported Yi Jifan, she left Sun Ying a large amount of money so that Sun Ying could live comfortably even if she went to jail. But now, the police told her very clearly that Sun Ying had tried to murder someone with a gun. In the process of resisting, she had accidentally injured herself and died. Sun Dongqing, who had just taken the bullet out of her shoulder, couldn't accept the truth. After a few screams, she went insane and became a mental patient who held a pillow and kept calling her daughter's name. Yi Jifan was gone. Sun Ying was gone. In the end, Sun Dongqing was the only one left alive. In her previous life, Yi Qian had lived such a lowly life when he was young. He had been bullied by Sun Dongqing to the point where he could scold her as he pleased. Sun Dongqing had deliberately allowed him to do so. Now that he had fallen to the point where his family was ruined and his family was dead, and he himself had gone insane, it could be considered retribution. Although he was still alive, he was living like a walking corpse. Ever since Yi Qian suffered the consequences of Sun Ying's actions that night, she had made a clean break with her past self. Therefore, she only replied with a simple yes. She didn't say anything else because Sun Dongqing's fate had nothing to do with her anymore. Even if Sun Dongqing was her biological aunt or her mother's biological sister, it had nothing to do with her. In the past, she had thought that if she had the ability in the future, she would personally bring Sun Dongqing to her mother's grave and ask her why she treated her biological niece so viciously in front of her mother. Later on, this thought faded, and she even found it laughable. If Sun Dongqing really treated her as her biological niece, she wouldn't have let her own daughter, Yi Ying, bully her and beat her and scold her. In the end, Sun Dongqing didn't think of her as her biological niece at all. She only treated her as a punching bag that she could beat and scold at will. If that was the case, why did she have to bring her to her mother's grave? Yi Qian put down her phone and heard a student from the Army Academy laugh. If that's the case, can we go to the harbor to see the night view now? Chapter 3494. According to the itinerary, Everyone would be staying at the reception center for foreign guests at the state-run port tonight. Tomorrow morning, they would go to the state-run port to visit the cargo ships, and then they would go to the military port in the afternoon. Just now, a student from the Naval Command Academy had asked if they could enter the port at night, and a lieutenant colonel had said that, logically, it should be possible. Yi Qian was still watching when Father Fu said, "You guys want to go? That's fine. The port at night has a different view, and it's rare for you guys to gather together. It's only 9:30 p.m. now, so you guys can definitely go and take a look. Tell the security guards outside that they won't stop you. Once you're inside, just board the ship and come back after you're done admiring the night view. Don't stay out too late." Father Fu's military rank was high, so when he spoke, it was as if he had made the final decision. Thus, Yi Qian didn't even open his mouth to express his opinion. Father Fu had already decided for her to go with the other students from the Naval Command Academy. The student from the National University of Science and Technology was a senior in his 3rd year. He knew Yi Qian, but Yi Qian didn't know him before. However, during the exchange meeting in the afternoon, they got to know each other. Now that they were going to the port together to admire the night view, he took the initiative to walk with Yi Qian. The 4 students walked and chatted as they walked towards the port. At this moment, Jiasin from the southern province was feeling a little uneasy. When she saw that Yi Qian had only sent a simple image, she frowned. Her little face was full of worry. Why was there only a MHM? In the past, Sun Dongqing had beaten and scolded Yi Qian, and even went to school to support Sun Ying in slandering Yi Qian. Now that Sun Dongqing had gone crazy, she shouldn't be happy, right? Anyway, she was quite happy. Even though she didn't know why getting shot in the shoulder would make people go crazy, she was very happy to see this kind of person end up in a state of madness. Bad people should be punished. Otherwise, if only good people suffered while bad people were free, then everyone should just be bad people. What was the point of being a good person? And Jessen was happy when she sent the message. At this moment, she was standing outside another room in the hotel with her phone in her hand. Biting her lower lip, she knocked on her boyfriend Wu Yu's room. Wu Yu was texting his comrades who were also on vacation. He first bragged to a few of his single comrades, such as Sparrow and V8, that he was on a date with his girlfriend and that he was currently in a hotel. Then his comrades, who had originally wanted to ignore him, sent him text messages one after another, criticizing and condemning him, pointing out that it was immoral to be a hooligan before marriage and that it should not be done. Between their words, there was a hint of sour grapes. Damn it, he even checked into a hotel with his girlfriend. What about them? They did not know how long they would have to date Miss Wuji. Just thinking about it made them feel terrible. Furthermore, this guy was still making sarcastic remarks. Was he still a comrade? Comrades in arms should advance and retreat together. GK, who had suffered internal injuries from holding it in, immediately called back. She gritted her teeth and said, "Let's go through hardships together and share blessings together. Shouldn't you immediately go home and hug a pillow to sleep? Where were the comrades who had promised to advance and retreat together? We're on a date with Miss Wuji, but you actually booked a room. How can you live with your conscience? Hurry up and go home." Just then, there was a knock on the door. Wu Yu answered as he walked. "I have a girlfriend now. Who still wants to date Miss Wuji? That's a matter for you single men. Ha ha. As for me, there's no need to date Miss Wuji anymore." Chapter 3495. He was so proud that his voice was a little loud. Even Jiasin, who was standing at the door, heard him clearly. However, she was thinking about Yi Qian and didn't realize what he was referring to. When the door opened, she asked, "Is Miss Five Fingers on a date? Or is it Thumbelina?" Wu Yu's eyes lit up when he saw his girlfriend suddenly knocking on his door. When he heard the question, he immediately said, "It's not me. It's my comrades on a date. Why aren't you asleep yet? What's the matter?" Since the call hadn't been cut off, Weaving Sparrow could hear everything clearly. She immediately let out a long, "Oh," and exposed his comrade's smugness. "Why aren't you asleep yet? What's the matter? We're in a hotel, and each of us has a room. Ha ha, I thought you were really capable. You immediately coaxed your girlfriend to warm the bed with you. That's enough. You have evil intentions, but no guts. You're just bragging in front of us. Goodbye. Wu Yu, who was mercilessly exposed by his comrades, didn't actually listen. His girlfriend suddenly appeared and asked him if he was dating Miss Five Fingers or Miss Thumbelina. Wu Yu felt that it was necessary to explain properly and let his comrades take the blame. However, Jiesin was just asking casually and did not take it to heart at all. After entering the room, she handed the phone to Wu Yu. Help me see if Jian is a little unhappy. I just told Jian that Sun Ying's mother had gone crazy, and Jian only replied with him, why do I feel that she is a little unhappy? Wu Yu knew that his girlfriend and Yi Qian had a good relationship. When he heard this, he took the phone and read the two messages. When he saw the reply, he smiled disapprovingly. She's not unhappy. She probably doesn't take it to heart. She's not interested in whether Sun Ying's mother went crazy or not. That's why she replied with one word. You're thinking too much. Besides, she and her boyfriend are on vacation. Maybe they're dating right now and don't have time to reply to you. Also, do you think Yi Qian is someone who gets unhappy easily? It really wasn't. After being persuaded by Wu Yu, Jiesin thought about it again and felt that she was thinking too much. She grinned and took the phone back. I don't think so. Maybe it's like what you said. She might be on a date with her extremely handsome boyfriend. Let me ask her, how could handsome be described as handsome? Also, was there Captain Handsome? Was he as handsome as Wu Yu? Jiesin thought that she might as well ask Wu Yu directly. She sent a text message to Wu Yu, then you rest early. I'll go back to my room first. His girlfriend knocked on his door in the middle of the night just to let him see if Yi Qian was unhappy. Shouldn't she be here to see if her boyfriend was cold while hugging his blanket? You're going back to your room already? He asked in a daze. Jiesin, who was texting, didn't raise her head. She just nodded and walked to the door. Wu was also a little scared. He muttered, she's really going back to her room. Then he opened the door for his girlfriend, who didn't have any other thoughts. His girlfriend didn't have any other thoughts, but he did. He did. Wu Yu opened the door obediently. Then, he didn't give up and struggled to say, it's still early. It's not even 10 o'clock yet. Yeah, it's not even 10 o'clock yet. I can still chat with Jane Eyre for a while. Jiesin replied happily. Chapter 3496. Wu Yu's heart was bleeding. What should he do? What should he do? His girlfriend didn't even smack. A crisp kiss sounded. Wu Yu, whose heart was bleeding, was kissed by Jiesin. It wasn't anywhere else, but on his lips. She kissed him on the lips. She kissed him on the lips. Wu Yu stood there motionless, completely unable to react. Good night, rest early. I'll go back to my room first. After kissing her boyfriend, Jiesin waved her hand gracefully and left in her hotel slippers. Wu Yu touched his kissed lips and watched in a daze as his girlfriend swiped her card and went back to her room. He then saw his girlfriend lean out and wave at him with a smile. Go back to your room quickly. Don't catch a cold. See you tomorrow. Wu Yu, whose hand was still on his lips, quickly put it down and grinned. Good night. See you tomorrow. Kissed, he was kissed. It was his first time kissing his girlfriend, but it was a little too short. Back in his room, Wu Yu, who still wanted more, touched his soft lips and couldn't help but think regretfully. He patted his own face in annoyance and muttered to himself, Are you stupid? Are you stupid? You're a Special Forces soldier? Don't you find it embarrassing? Shame on you. Where did your usual reaction go? Why didn't you hug her for a longer time? Wu Yu expressed his regret. In the end, he clenched his fists and thought, I must take the initiative to kiss her tomorrow. At this moment, text messages came in one after another. They were all from his comrades. Jike had already told her comrades what she knew. After learning that Wu Yu and his girlfriend went to a hotel and slept in separate rooms, they all expressed their regret and a strong sense of schadenfreude. In response, Wu Yu replied, Haha, my girlfriend took the initiative to kiss me just now. How far do you think I am from happy days? Ha ha ha. After the text message was sent, The phone was so quiet that it seemed to be turned off. No one else sent a message to express their regret. Yi Qian, who had already arrived at the port, received a message from Jiasin asking if she was with her boyfriend. Yi Qian smiled and replied, "No, I'm in Jean City with other students." "No way. It's the new year and you're still on exchange. Wu Yu and I are dating." "Ha ha ha, are you jealous?" "I'm envious." "Have a good date and don't get distracted." "What's there to be distracted about? It's already late at night, and we still have to go see the Cedars tomorrow. Let's go back to our rooms and sleep." "You go ahead, I'm going to sleep." After confirming that her friend was indeed not unhappy, and Jiasin, who was in a good mood, happily ended the text conversation, Yi Qian replied, "Good night." Then he put his phone into his pocket. The student from a Naval Command Academy pointed to a ship that was operating in front of them and said, "Let's go over there and take a look. We'll come down when they leave." They were all military academy students who had come here for an exchange. As long as they did not interfere with the other students' work, they were allowed to visit the cargo ship. Yi Qian had not been on a ship before, and hearing this, his interest was piqued. "Sure, I want to go up and take a look too." "Then let's go to the bow and have a look. Come down after you're done." The third-year senior from a National University of Science and Technology said, "It takes about 10 minutes to go up and down. It won't affect the crew's work." The other three nodded in agreement. The road to the cargo ship was a little dark, and a few of them unconsciously slowed down a little. The student from the Air Force Academy laughed and said, "Is there a shortage of electricity? There aren't even any lights to illuminate the road." Chapter 3497. The naval cadet laughed and said, "It's late at night, and it's also winter. Who would come out to look at cargo ships like us? It's normal to turn off the lights to save electricity." "That's true. It's a little cold when the sea breeze blows." Even wearing a military coat couldn't resist the cold. The chilly sea breeze blew straight into their bodies. Yi Qian couldn't help but tighten her clothes and tease, "Why don't we go back now?" It really wasn't an ordinary wind. The sea breeze in winter was even colder than the wind in the mountains. It was so cold that it could freeze one's bones. After she finished speaking, the cadets all laughed. "Ha ha! We're not going back. We're not going back. We're almost there. If we go back now, wouldn't we have wasted 20 minutes in the sea breeze? Let's go to the bow and take a look. We'll go back once we're done. Tomorrow, when the officers ask us what we saw, we'll be able to answer." Before they set off, Father Fu said, "Tell us what you saw tomorrow." For the cadets to remember. This was an ocean-going cargo ship heading to the Olympias port. The journey alone would take more than 3 months, and they would only stop at one port to replenish their supplies. When the four of them were still some distance away from the cargo ship, 2 staff members suddenly walked out from the shadows and said in a low voice, "This is a cargo ship operation. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter." The staff members who walked out didn't make a sound at all. They appeared silently and stared vigilantly at the few figures in the shadows. Just as one of the cadets was about to speak, Yi Qian spoke first and took 2 steps forward. As she walked forward, one of the staff members who blocked her path moved his right hand. This movement made Yi Qian's eyes suddenly sharpen. She smiled and said, "Sorry, we saw a cargo ship operation here. It's the first time we've seen a large ship, so we were a little curious and wanted to take a look. Didn't you say we could go up? We'll just go to the bow and take a look. It won't take too long, just 10 minutes." After she finished speaking, Yi Qian felt her senior take a step forward and secretly tug at her coat. There was something wrong with the 2 staff members. Their movements were so light that there was no sound at all. They were not like ordinary security guards. Both of them had some skills, and they did not shine any light on them when they came out. It could be seen that they had been hiding nearby and would not show up casually. Moreover, their voices were low and filled with hostility. Just as she walked towards the 2 staff members, one of them subconsciously reached for his waist. This action was too familiar to her. To the other 3 students, it was all too familiar. How could the third-year senior brother of the National Science University let his junior sister face this alone? He walked to the back and secretly reminded Yi Qian. The other two students had already tensed up and immediately entered a state of alert. You can't go in here. There's a huge load up there. If you want to see it, go ahead. It was probably because Yi Qian was a girl that the two staff members lowered their guard. However, their harsh tone did not soften. Go back, all of you. This is not a place where you can come and go as you please. Quick, go back. He didn't hide his ruthlessness, trying to scare away the young people who didn't sleep at night and wanted to come over to see the cargo ship. If you don't want to look, then don't look. Why are you being so fierce? Go, go, go. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to see it anymore. So fierce. As she spoke, Yi Qian turned around. At the same time, she grabbed the third-year senior brother's arm and pretended to be dissatisfied. It's all your fault. You said something about looking at the night view. What are you looking at? You got scolded for no reason. The third-year senior brother reacted quickly. He immediately softened his voice and turned into a coaxing girlfriend's boyfriend. It's my fault. It's my fault. Don't be angry. I'll take you out for good food tomorrow. He didn't forget to say to the other two students, I'm sorry for making you come here for nothing. I'll treat you to a meal tomorrow as an apology. Chapter 3498. Yi Jian did not consider whether they would be able to react when she hooked her arm around Senior Brother Year 3's arm. Those who could come here for the exchange were all outstanding students with comprehensive qualities. Since Senior Brother Year 3 had noticed something strange at the same time and quickly stood by her side, she believed that Senior Brother Year 3 would react immediately and cooperate with her if she did anything. Yi Qian changed his role a second ago, while the third-year senior entered the zone a second later. He did not forget to pull the two students from the Air Force Academy and the Naval Command Academy out of the group. The two students had already entered the zone. Li Xiang from the Naval Command Academy laughed. I'll remember that. I originally wanted to eat at Jean City's Big Bun tomorrow, but I've changed my mind. Let's go to Osmanthus Garden Restaurant. Jiang Yang from the Air Force Academy immediately responded. Shouldn't it be Fu Huixin? My roommate, Old 4, treated me to Osmanthus Garden Restaurant last time. Let's change it to Fu Huixin. I heard that it's very delicious. It's an authentic home-cooked restaurant in Jean City. Yi Qian spoke at the right time. How about Osmanthus Garden Restaurant for lunch and Fu Huixin for dinner? I've never eaten there before anyway. The four young people talked as they walked back. Yi Qian and the third-year senior walked behind them. The two of them were talking, but they were actually paying attention to the situation behind them. Only after walking for at least 100 meters did the four of them finally relax. Yi Qian said in a deep voice, the two staff members who stopped us just now clearly had guns on them. This is a serious matter. We have to report it immediately. Let's go together. There must be something wrong with the cargo ship. The third-year senior, Zhang Minghong, quickened his pace and said in a deep voice, I don't know what kind of guns they have on them. It's safer to keep a distance. If they were to be shot in the back, none of the four of them would be able to escape. He even let Yi Qian walk in the middle while he walked at the back. Yi Qian smiled and said, It's a handgun. A handgun's effective shooting range is not very far. We've already walked about 120 meters unless they have a combat handgun on them. A handgun's effective shooting range was within 50 meters, while a combat handgun's effective shooting range was between 100 to 200 meters. They had walked about 120 meters and were already out of the effective shooting range of a handgun. As for the sniper rifles, there was no need to worry. If they used sniper rifles to snipe them, wouldn't it be the same as telling them that there was something wrong with the cargo ship? Moreover, the sniper fired 1 bullet per shot, for people would need 4 bullets. Now that they had started to walk to the place where the containers were stacked, at least 2 people would be able to avoid the sniper and escape the scene. Therefore, there was no need to worry about the sniper. Yi Qian quickened his pace and quickly circled around to the back of a container. He first sent a text message to Father Fu to quickly report the situation on their side. He wanted to buy some time to find out what was wrong with the cargo ship. Father Fu did not sleep. He was still chatting with his colleagues. Since there were not many students around, the content of the conversation was more focused on daily life. Those who were more familiar with him even asked about the recent situation of their children. When they were talking about their children, Father Fu wanted to tell his colleagues that the female student sitting next to him today was none other than his daughter, but he could only hold it in. When he received a text message from Yi Qian, Father Fu only glanced at it casually. When he saw that it was from Yi Qian, he picked up the phone and opened it with a smile. The colleague sitting on his right was still lamenting about his son's learning problems when he suddenly heard Father Fu say, "There's something wrong with the cargo ship." The 4 students were stopped by 2 armed men. They are not allowed to board the ship. Chapter 3499. After Father Fu finished speaking, everyone was shocked. How could there be a gun? Which cargo ship did they go to? Where's the exact location now? Tell them to come back immediately. Then inform the police. That's right. Inform the police immediately. Regardless of whether there is a gun or not, I believe in the judgment of our students. They wouldn't have thought that the other party had a gun for no reason. They must have been threatened in some way to conclude that the other party had a gun. None of the leaders present doubted the accuracy of the information provided by the students. The 4 students were the best of the best and had excellent professional qualities. Their judgment might not be 100% correct, but it was definitely 99% correct. The leader of the National Academy of Science and Technology looked solemn and asked Father Fu, "Major General, was it our student, Yi Qian, who sent you the message?" "Yes, it was her." Father Fu nodded, and his jaw was a little tense. "I believe in Yi Qian's professional ability. If she said there was a gun, then there must be a gun. His daughter had once participated in foreign rescue operations, and it was also that rescue operation that allowed the father and daughter to meet. In the smoke of war, gunshots, and cannons, his daughter came to his side as a special forces soldier. Therefore, he did not doubt his daughter's judgment at all. The leader of the National Academy of Science and Technology's fingers were trembling. It can't be wrong. It can't be wrong. There must be something wrong with the cargo ship. Although Yi Qian is only a second-year student, she was able to command troops when she was in her first year. She usually has excellent professional grades. Even our instructors sometimes have to ask her for advice. Major General Fu, they must have a gun on them." No one knew Yi Qian's professional ability better than the leaders of the school. When the leader of the National Academy of Science and Technology heard that the other party had a gun and that the 2 outstanding students from his school were unarmed, his whole body tensed up and his muscles twitched. These were the outstanding students of their school. They would have great achievements in the future and could be the pillars of the country. If something happened to them tonight, just thinking about it made his heart ache. Just as the leader was about to inform the police, Father Fu's phone rang. Everyone looked at Father Fu. The leader of the Air Force Academy asked in a tense voice, "Are the students back?" It was not a call from a student, but from Commander-in-Chief Xia. Father Fu, who was worried about his daughter, saw the familiar caller ID and his eyes darkened. He was worried that something might have happened to Xia Jinyuan. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had to settle his food and accommodation at the military headquarters because of Li Chuhai's escape, had a cold expression on his face. He held the microphone and said slowly, "Major General Fu, according to the latest development, Li Chuhai might have escaped to the port of Jin City. Where are you now? A military port or a civilian port?" "Jin port, Li Chuhai, cargo ship, guns." Father Fu gathered all the information in a flash. He did not immediately answer Commander-in-Chief Xia, but hurriedly stopped his colleagues from contacting the police. "Don't call the police for the time being. Cut it off. If the gunman that my daughter met earlier was Li Chuhai's men, I can't let the police get involved." To be able to escape from the heavily guarded capital, Li Chuhai's strength was unfathomable. The leader of the Air Force Academy, who had already connected to the police, immediately cut off the call. Then, he stared at Father Fu without blinking. "How accurate is the information? Where did it come from?" Father Fu spoke quickly. "We are now at the civilian port. Yi Qian just sent me a message saying that she and 3 other students were going to visit a cargo ship, but they were stopped by 2 staff members who had guns. Chapter 3500. Commander-in-Chief Xia suddenly stood up and said, Minkong, okay, I'll have her comrades arrive immediately. Please give Yi Qian my order and tell her to do everything she can sneak onto the cargo ship. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the time and quickly called Major General Yang on another landline. Major General Yang, immediately send your troops to Jinshi Minkong. Yi Qian accidentally found someone with guns on a ship at Minkong. Yes, sir. Major General Yang, who was also in the military, responded sternly and quickly contacted Pigeon, White Crane, and 6 other Special Forces members of the Snowfield Brigade who were supporting the encirclement operation. At the same time, Father Fu heard Commander-in-Chief Xia urgently contacting 3 parties. First, Major General Yang, then the National Defense Committee and the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection. After the 3 parties finished contacting each other, he spoke to Father Fu again. Major General Fu, our Special Forces will immediately head to Jinshi Minkong and seal off the coastline. Please pass on my order to Yi Qian immediately. The news is only half reliable. Old Man Li used his connections to make Li Chuhai escape. It is indeed easier to escape from Jinshi Minkong, especially in international waters. The chance of escape is more than 70%. Father Fu himself felt that Li Chuhai would most likely choose Minkong to escape, and the ship that Yi Qian found the problem was most likely the ship that he escaped from. Otherwise, why would there be armed personnel guarding the ship? The ship leaves at 2 a.m., and it is 10 p.m. now. There are still 4 hours before the ship departs, but there is a possibility that it will leave earlier. So, please come to Minkong as soon as possible. Father Fu's back was almost straight. Although there was no change in his expression, it was obvious that Father Fu was not as calm as he appeared to be on the surface. Father Fu was left-handed, but he could also use his right hand flexibly. Yi Qian was similar to Father Fu in this aspect. Only in an emergency could it be seen that both father and daughter were left-handed. The entire call lasted less than 3 minutes. When Father Fu and Commander-in-Chief Xia ended the call, Yi Qian had also sent out a text message asking him to do everything he could to get on the ship. The faces of the leaders of the 3 academies were as solemn as dark clouds. Although they didn't know which military leader Major General Fu was talking to on the other end of the phone, it didn't stop them from getting some clues from the short 3-minute conversation. The military is pursuing an important fugitive. Our initial judgment is that this person will escape from our country through Jean City's private port. I suspect that the armed staff that the 4 students encountered is very likely to be the personnel who will receive this important fugitive. The military has already sent reinforcements. The police shouldn't be alarmed to avoid alerting the enemy and causing the important fugitives to change their routes. Now, Yi Qian needs to cooperate with the military. The other 3 students will return to the reception center for foreign guests. The leaders of the Naval Command Academy and the Air Force Academy let out a long sigh of relief. But before they could completely relax, their faces became serious again. How could Yi Qian, a student from the National University of Science and Technology, cooperate with the military? How? How could this be arranged? The other party had a gun, but she didn't have any weapon to defend herself. Moreover, she was only a second-year student. She only had experience in drills with other students. She didn't have any actual combat experience. How could the higher-ups ask her to cooperate? This was illogical. The leaders of the National University of Science and Technology gritted their teeth. The third-year student was outstanding, but the second-year student Yi Qian was equally outstanding. How could there be such an illogical arrangement for Yi Qian to stay behind and face danger alone and wait for reinforcements? Chapter 3501. The leader of the National University of Science and Technology, who was worried about the safety of his students, raised his doubts with a dark expression. The other party has a gun, but Yi Qian doesn't. How could she cooperate? The leader of the National University of Science and Technology's voice was as cold as ice. He just wanted all of his students to come back and not leave a single one behind. Father Fu could hear the leader of the National University of Science and Technology's worry about his daughter, Yi Qian. As a father, he was worried about his daughter as well. But since Commander-in-Chief Xia gave the order, as a father, he had no right to interfere. His daughter was a soldier. If he stopped her from following orders because he was worried about her safety, then he didn't deserve to wear the green military uniform that protected the country's peace and stability. Green represented hope and new life. The meaning of the military uniform was to protect the country. As a soldier, chasing down criminals that threatened the country was an unshirkable responsibility. His daughter had to shoulder this responsibility. Yi Qian's professional ability is very strong. The higher-ups believe that she can complete the mission successfully. Moreover, we don't want her to directly negotiate with the dangerous people with guns. We want her to sneak onto the ship first. With Yi Qian's ability, she can definitely do it. Father Fu comforted the leader of the National University of Science and Technology. When Yi Qian received the message, she and the 3 students were hiding behind a tall container. They heard the sound of footsteps walking past them. I don't see anyone. Inform the front to block the passage. You 2 go this way. We'll search this way. Okay. They can't have gone far. They must be nearby. Search this way. The 4 people in charge of the search stood behind the container and whispered to each other. They immediately split up and searched left and right carefully. They had to find the 4 young people. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. The voice of the guard in front came from the walkie-talkie they carried with them. F*CK. Have you found them? If you haven't, send more people to search together. I don't believe that the 4 of them disappeared into thin air. They must still be inside. If we can't find them, we'll all be in trouble. The voice was very close, as if it was right next to their ears. Yi Qian made a hand gesture. The few of them leaned against the cold container and slowly circled around the 2 people who were searching for them. Other than Yi Qian, the other 3 students were a little nervous. This was their first time confronting dangerous people with guns. No matter how strong they were still a little nervous. After all, the other party had guns. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was not nervous at all. She was calm and composed. Therefore, she took the lead and led the third-year students to play hide-and-seek with the people who were searching for them. And the 3 male students were stunned. If they had to stay on the ship, it should be the 3 of them. How could they let the female students stay? Yi Qian did not have time to explain. She whispered and led the 3 students in the direction of the port. Only then did they realize that they had mistakenly entered the cargo ship. They should have gone left when they reached the port, but they had chosen to go straight in the middle. Fortunately, they had gone the wrong way. Otherwise, they would not have known that there was something wrong with the cargo ship. Chapter 3502. The 3 students were very good at dealing with emergencies. When Yi Qian asked them to stay, they didn't say anything immediately. Instead, they retreated to the dock together. They had to leave this place first. This was not the time to talk about other things. Staying here for 1 more minute meant more danger. It wasn't too late to leave first. The 4 of them cooperated very well. Plus, the containers were tall and big. There were a few times when they heard footsteps coming, but the 4 of them were able to avoid them. It took them less than 15 minutes to walk from the dock to the cargo ship. It took them half the time to return to the dock from the cargo ship. They were able to dodge successfully. Otherwise, they would have wasted more time. The 4 of them, who were almost out of the container, hid under another container. The exit was right in front of them. From where they were, they could see that there were at least 4 people guarding the exit. How are they going to get out? The senior from a national science university, Zhang Minghong, looked outside and then retreated. He whispered to Yi Qian, "If we leave, what will happen to you? We've confirmed that there's something wrong with the cargo ship. But once you're exposed, the military uniform you're wearing will put you in danger. You don't have any self-defense weapons, but they have guns." Zhang Minghong wanted to stay with them. His voice became darker. "I'll stay. You send Jiang Yang and Li Xiang away. Jiang Yang and Li Xiang heard him. How could they let the students from the National Science University stay? The two of them shook their heads and said in unison, "No, we have to stay. We have to stay together." Before they could finish, they saw Yi Qian, who was standing at the outermost area, suddenly move. The three of them looked up in shock. They saw Yi Qian rush out like a cheetah in the dark. When he came back, he was dragging a man who was struggling with his throat. Before they could react, Yi Qian pressed the man to the ground. "You guys stay on guard." Eldest senior brother Gua, who hadn't even finished his sentence of, "I'm going to help," when they heard the sound of a bone breaking. The senior from the National Science University, Zhang Minghong, who had taken half a step forward, suddenly froze. His eyes widened as he stared blankly. The man who had been trying to kick the container to attract the attention of his accomplices was now motionless. He had been able to move a second ago, but now he was completely motionless. The three of them widened their eyes in shock. "Damn! F***CK. Damn. This. Did he break his neck?" The female student, Yi Qian, directly twisted the neck of the guy who got close to them and broke it. F***CK. His first move was a sure kill move, and his movements were so familiar that it was as if he had done this kind of thing often. F***CK. He had directly killed someone. After quickly eliminating a target, Yi Qian picked up the pistol that had fallen to the ground. He said to the three male students who were frozen in shock, "Now you have a self-defense weapon. It's a Walter P99A3 double-action basic automatic pistol. No wonder you didn't fire easily. It's because this gun can't be fitted with a silencer. Not bad. It's a new handgun that came out in 1997. As she spoke, she took out the magazine to check its capacity. She even took out a bullet and observed it. 10 live bullets. That's enough. 1 shot, 1 target. 10 bullets, 10 targets. That's definitely enough. She just had to be a little frugal and shoot accurately. She couldn't shoot blindly. She had even finished checking the handgun. The three male students who had been stunned by her move were still in shock. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.